Okay, and it's 8 o'clock and we got a lot to do. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the regular board meeting for Saturday, January 11th, 2020. It's now 8 a.m. And may we have the roll call, Peter?
Sure. Perot?
Yes.
I think he's here.
Present.
Okay, he's Epstein?
Present.
Rickert?
Here.
O'Grady?
Here.
Dornbrook here.
Okay, Eric, do you have any announcements to make?
Just that if anyone would like to make a comment, please unmute yourself, raise your hand using the raise your hand function. And if you can unmute yourself, I should be able to, hopefully.
Okay, I've got a couple things. The first is the way this is going to work, because we have actually three meetings, and then we also have a closed session as part of this meeting. So at about, did you say 10 o'clock, Eric, or 10:30?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Around 10:30, wherever we are in the board agenda, we'll continue the meeting to perhaps an hour or maybe half hour later. And we'll move on to the other two meetings, which are the 501c3, the fire department, and the PFC meeting. Then we'll come back to the board meeting and finish that through item 13. Then we'll move into a closed session. And for the closed session, we have a different Zoom call in, which will require a password. So then we'll have our closed session, then we'll move back into open session with the current Zoom meetings. We've never done a closed session and multiple meetings on Zoom, so hopefully this will work out fine. And just a reminder that all of our voting needs to be by roll call since we are on Zoom. Okay, are there any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? I would like to pull, I have one comment on the consent calendar item 6A. So I'd like to pull that for notation.
I agree.
Are there any other corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? If not, we'll move on to comments from the audience. Anyone in attendance may speak on an item that is not on the agenda. And just raise your hand so Eric knows that you would like to speak. Eric, do you see anyone?
Not seeing any, no.
Okay. Anyone having trouble figuring out how to raise your hand? No, guess not. Okay, we'll move on to adoption of the consent calendar. Since A has been moved to the next item, this is to approve the consent for claims and to review and approve the receivables and shutoffs report. Do I have a motion to adopt items B and C of the consent calendar?
This is Bob Epstein. I move we adopt B and C.
Okay, is there a second?
Dornbrook seconds that.
Okay, let's go through roll call.
You want me to call it? Okay.
Yeah, go through roll call.
Okay. Rickert?
Aye.
Epstein?
Aye.
O'Grady?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
And Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. And what I had on the minutes, it's on page 7 of our packet. It's the snow removal contract pricing item. Second and third lines of the minutes read, the board directed staff to bring back a pricing option that reduces the 3 HOAs with private driveway contracts by 90%. Now, even though I know those HOAs would love to have their contract reduced by 90%, I doubt that's what was meant. I think it's
probably 10% was probably what was meant.
10%. So that's the correction.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Jess will be happy you caught that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I reviewed these earlier or not. I'm sorry I didn't catch it.
No, no.
The alternative would have been to say to 90%.
Yes, or to 90%, either by 10% or to 90%, right?
I will have her correct that.
Okay. Okay, I would like to move now that we approve the board meeting minutes of May 9th.
Second.
All in favor? Roll call again, Peter, please.
Sure. Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. And
Okay.
Perot.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, we now move on to items for board action. We're now item 8A, finances. And Kelly, please feel free to go through A, items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And Kelly, good morning.
Good morning.
One request I have is if you could highlight changes since Tuesday's Finance Committee meeting.
Highlight, there's been no changes into the financials.
Okay. I guess I'm thinking budget.
Okay. So starting with the balance sheet on page 25 of your packet, there's nothing really new to report on the balance sheet that we haven't already discussed. So unless there are any questions on the balance sheet, I'll move on to the revenue account by fund. Okay, so on page 27 of your packet, you'll see that Fund 01, which is Parks, G&A, and Fire, is at a negative, but we expect to see that at a negative at this time of the year. Fund 10, which is Water, is at a positive of $79,000. Fund 20, which is Wastewater, is at a positive of $37,000. Fund 40, which is Employee Housing, is at a negative, but we were expecting that due to the purchase of the 2 new condominiums. Fund 50 is Electric at $1.6 million. Fund 60 is Cable at $5,000. Fund 70 is Snow Removal at $16,163. Fund 80 is Propane at $526,000. And Fund 90 is Solid Waste at a negative $11,292. Any questions on the revenue account by fund?
So what happens to these now on June 30th?
So the funds that can have property taxes allocated will have property taxes allocated to cover any negative cash balances. Those that don't, that we can't fund with property tax allocations will get an interfund loan from Electric to cover their cash losses.
Got it. And so then these balances will either be 0 or positive as a result?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the combined income statement on page 28. Operating revenues for the month of May were down by $53,000, but you can see residential revenue actually was better than planned by $20,000. And year-to-date, total revenues are down from plan by $502,000 total, but if you look at commercial revenue, they're down by $488,000, and residential is down by $78,000. Year-to-date, total operating is down from plan by $148,000, and year-to-date, total net is above and by 1,000, or is above, is not a negative by $1,673. Moving on to department on page 30 of your packet. Year-to-date total operating is up from plan by $54,000, and this is directly related to the grant funding we received for the SCBA's. But year-to-date, they are down. They are operating at a loss of $87,000.
And Kelly, I just want to confirm something.
Mhm.
The funds that are in the 501c3 for the benefit of the fire department, those are really for capital expenditures, right? I mean, we don't
Yes,
use those funds at all in order to offset operating losses.
correct.
It's really, yeah, okay.
It's part of the rules of the 501c3 are when you go out to advertise for donations, you have to spend that money on what you advertised you were trying to purchase.
Right.
So
Okay. Good.
Okay. Moving on to water on page 32 of your packet. Operating revenues for May for water were right at plan. And year to date, they are down from plan by $6,300. Year to date, total operating is up from plan by $49,000 and operating at a loss of $73,000 through May. Moving on to wastewater on page 33. Operating revenues for May were actually up from plan by $4,300, and you can see that is mainly due to residential revenues, those being above plan by almost $8,000. Year to date, total operating or total revenues are down from plan by $5,600, but again, you can see that residential revenue is over plan by $17,000. So we've definitely seen, and when we get to June, you'll see even more that we've had way more people in the valley during this time of year than we've ever had. So year to date, total operating for wastewater is above plan by $160,000, but operating at a loss of $123,000. Moving on to electric on page 35. This is where you can really see the impact of the COVID crisis. Operating revenues for electric are down from plan in May by $31,000. Year to date, they are down by $382,000. And you can see that's $290,000 in commercial revenues and $51,000 in residential revenues for electric. Year to date total up.
Kelly, can I just, go ahead and
No,
I'll
go
ask
ahead.
the question. Oh, well, so the ratios that we have to meet, typically have to meet, are tied to our expenses. Whoops, I've got a echo here now. Are tied to our expenses, not to the revenues. Is that correct?
Oh no, they're tied to everything. It's all about revenues, expenses, debt ratios. There's 4 different tiers that we have to meet, and so everything is touched. There's just several different calculations that we have to meet. So
even though our operating is positive, significantly positive, we may have to use property taxes to bolster our revenues.
we would, but for
we don't
this
this
year,
year.
yeah, this year
We
we
don't
don't
this
need
year.
to do that, right?
Right.
Thank goodness. I think that's one of the things that we're going to have some property tax revenue, mainly next fiscal year, because of the way the it's calendar year versus our fiscal year. We have already allocated $225,000 to electric for property tax revenue, but that was for calendar year 19. So calendar year 20, we won't have to put any more property tax revenue in for this fiscal year. And we may not have to put anything in December of next fiscal year, but possibly in June. So.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to snow removal on page 37 of your packet. So these are total revenues that had been received through May. We haven't posted all of our contract revenues through May now. So year-to-date total operating for snow removal is up from plan by $7,100 through May. And I expect to see that come back more into line when we get to June. But still, I think the changes that were made in the pricing and it obviously was the right decision to make because we are, just slightly over plan. Moving on to propane on page 38. Operating revenues for May were down from plan by $21,000. Year to date, they're down from plan by $206,000. We do see that kind of net out in cost of goods sold. So year to date total operating for propane is actually up from plan by $8,700. So good turnaround for propane. And then moving on to solid waste on page 39. Year to date, they are total operating is down from plan by $31,000 and operating at a loss of $40,000. And that's all I have on income statements. Was there any questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on then to your income statement comparison on page 41. I thought this was a really good thing to look at. Just looking at the comparison of commercial and residential revenues. Commercial revenues compared to last year are down by $757,000. And residential were down by $45,000. So considering how the large swing from last year to this year with revenues, I really feel like, we could be in a really worse place than we are right now.
It almost seems like this is I guess a bellwether of sorts. It's an indication of, because this was just half of half of March and
Right.
April and part of April. And if for some reason the resort opening is delayed or doesn't happen, you can see where our revenues would be down.
Right.
I mean, the commercial, down a lot more than the 20% that we analyzed.
Right. And honestly, it's horrible to say it, but even though the resort closed, having so much more residential revenue up here has kind of saved us in a small way.
Yeah, right.
I'd like to add something here. So when we compute our rate, we basically do it in a way that is based on the expected consumption. So for residential, we actually had a lot more consumption in April and May than we ever had. And so I think we generate more money because these rates are based on the lower consumption. And since we increase in percentage relatively a lot, so all these fixed expense get better return than they would have on the lower consumption. So I think that's why we get such a good help from the residential to offset the commercial deficit, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on the income statement comparison? Okay, moving on then to June preliminary income statement. So this is where you, like I said, you really can see the residential revenues. Operating revenues for June were up from plan by $32,000. And that is all due to the residential revenue being above plan by $52,000. So year to date, commercial revenue is down from plan by $503,000, residential by $26,000, and total revenues by $469,000.
Huh.
So I really, considering our cash position, we could have really done worse. And I think we made good decisions on what to spend and what not to spend in the situation, so that our cash position is still viable.
Yeah, I agree, Kelly. I mean, I think all of you have done a great job on that.
Any questions on June preliminary? All right, moving on then to the cash flow. For total for June, total operating cash was at 3.1 million, and that was 1.5 in our regular operating cash, and then 1.5 in our LAIF account. And so up from plan by 1.3 million. And I do want to note that we did get our check from Alpine County in June, which is why this is even so much more up from plan than I had expected. I didn't expect us to get our big check from them until July. So it was good that we were able to get that in June.
Yes.
And then the following years on this are kind of moot at this point, because once the budget is, approved, I'll be updating all of these numbers. So. And then finally, known budget variances through May. The only change that was made was updating the playground overage amount.
Okay, Kelly, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the public? I'll just take a moment so that people can raise their hands. Do they have anything to say? And Eric, you'll let me know if somebody raises a hand. Okay, let's move on to item 8B, snow removal. So item 1 under B is HOA and driveway pricing for FY 2021.
So I took the numbers, we went back and we did the 90% allocation, not the 90% reduction. And so you can see on this page, we have the comparison of the 3-year average with and without in these columns here. And so that's where the HOA sit relatively with and without the 90% reduction. In terms of pricing, what that means, again, I did the with and without. So this is the with, this is the without, removing that 10%, and there's the difference between the contracts for the HOAs recommended based on the budget amount, the revenue amount we need to derive from snow removal.
Okay, board members, any questions or comments? And also public, if no one would like to raise your hand.
Well, Eric, you have a comment, don't you? Eric Rickert?
I do, but I just want to give other people a chance here.
Gracious of you.
I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand right now, Eric.
Okay.
Physically or.
Well, I
want you. Can I say something since
Yes,
you wanted
Bertrand.
to be going after? So my understanding is, so the minute for the 3 HOA, Juniper Ridge, Palisade, and Kirkwood Meadow has been reduced by 10%. For compensating for the access time to the homeowner driveway that is allocated to the HOA. So that's what I understood from the table, since we have 90% allocated for each of them. So what I'm not clear is how a 10% reduction in minutes transfer in a 5.7% reduction in money, in the cost. So I don't know, Eric, if you can, Eric with a K, if you can explain a bit how this was computed.
Sure. So looking at the spreadsheet, so the minutes for Juniper Ridge, KMA, and Palisades, the minutes were reduced by 10% for them. All the others that don't have driveways, you can see, were the same. So the total minutes in each year were reduced, and the percentages were recalculated with the reduced minutes. So quite simply, it's just this number divided by this number gives us the 90% allocation to every HOA. And then this is just an average. So the average 3 years is an average of this column, and this column, and similarly, just move one column over for the 90%. It's an average of this column, oops, that's a little too fast. That column and that column. That column. Well, we'll get there. There we go. That column, and that's how the minutes were reduced and the percentages recalculated.
So
Yes. So Bertrand, I think what happens is the denominator for all the HOAs goes down, whereas the numerators for most stay the same, and the numerators for the three are the 10% reduction. But because the denominator goes down, the percentage is less for KMA, for example, is less than 10%, and for the others it goes up, or they're so small it stays the same. That's the way I understood it.
yeah, I'm surprised there is such a big difference because, yes, I understand the total average minute. So
Yeah.
I'm just surprised. I was not able to, it came pretty late, so I didn't have a chance to recompute it, but it sounds odd that we have such a big difference because of this relatively small change in total minutes. And also, basically, yeah, I would have to compute it. It just doesn't sound right to me. Yeah.
Okay. Board members, anything else? I mean, well, maybe I'll go ahead now. I just don't want to usurp someone else's comments here.
I just want to say, Eric, that I double checked all the numbers that Eric with a K did and
Good,
came with the
thank
same
you.
numbers.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, here's what I find just fine. Number one, as I said, we said at the last meeting, the 3-year average is fine rather than a 4-year average, dropping the earliest year. That's fine. I also think that there should be some accommodation to those 3 HOAs that would otherwise be charged for travel time that has nothing to do with HOA roads, it just has to do with driveways. So I understand that. What I don't get is, I mean, I understand the math. I do understand the math. I don't understand the logic. Because when you step back, and basically what we're saying here is that because for the contract driveway HOAs, equipment needs to move across those HOA roads to service those HOA driveways that are under contract. As it turns out, 9 of the other HOAs, which have nothing to do with that movement, nothing to do with those driveways, have their costs increase. And 2 fairly significantly, Sentinels West and East Meadows. And what I can't do is, in my mind, justify that logic. If it made logical sense, I'd be fine with it. If it seemed fair in some way, I'd be fine with it. but it doesn't seem either logical or fair to me that what occurs with contract driveways is negatively impacting 9 out of the 22 HOAs, and the other ones are either so small that it doesn't make a difference, or then they're the 3 that decrease. And like I said, I think it's justified that the 3 decrease. I just don't understand exactly why. I mean, I understand the math. I don't understand the logic.
Can I make a suggestion to explain how this works? So what happened is these 3 HOA were improperly billed access time to the private driveways. By doing so, you artificially increase the HOA, this time for these 3 HOA. And since this is correlated, we have each the way we do it, and I think that's a bad idea. Technically, I understand why we do it, but since we do it so each HOA pair is share of the 100%, so we are all connected together. So if you overcharge 3 HOA, everyone else is going to be undercharged. The overcharge is balancing with the undercharge. So now that we fix the 3 HOA, then we need, because of the way we do things, this is impacting everyone else. But basically what it does, it just rebalance appropriately the 3 which were overcharged to a lesser price, and by definition is going to increase the other one that were undercharged because the 3 were overcharged. That makes sense?
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying. I'm trying to understand. Well,
No, I don't
understand
think
what
it
you're
makes
saying,
sense at all. I think that Eric Rickert's point is a good one, which I hadn't thought of, and that is, why are other HOAs going up because of transit time within either Palisades or KMA? So I don't agree with what you're saying, Bertrand.
Well, let me just say that I agree with Bertrand, having looked at the data for months now, that you can think also that the other 18 were being undercharged. Because here's what's happening is we don't track transit time. So when a unit leaves the garage and heads for an HOA, that time there's just a general bucket that we don't count for, which is travel time, in transit. And what we've done with this, we can argue whether 10% is the right number or not.
Yeah.
What we've done is we've said the transit time for getting to driveways is the same as the transit time for HOAs. It all goes in the one bucket. So what we've said is, so that's what we've done is we've moved the transit time for driveways into the general transit time and out of the 3 HOAs. As a result, we've always said that each HOA, we take their total, pays their percentage of the total time in all HOAs. So the fact that the denominator had some transit time in it that we've removed is the reason why the 18 were being undercharged before we corrected this. If we want to do a refinement, we could try to more accurately measure the transit time between driveways. Whether it's 10% or 5%, I don't know, but we could figure it out.
Bob, is the transit time part of the KMPUD number? I mean, where
No.
does transit time show up?
There are no landmarks between the vehicle service station and the first HOA.
So the transit
they
time
travel on Loop Road. So the transit times are not part of this. We don't try to allocate the transit times because it'd be impossible to say, well, we'll charge it for the first HOA where it shows up to, and they go in between. Sure. So the transit times are left out, and that's an argument for leaving out the transit time between driveways as well.
And the transit time that's left out for Loop Road or driving on Kirkwood Meadows Drive is just part of the general snow removal costs that are allocated to everyone.
That's right. It's the same as training the drivers. We have a collection of minutes that are not revenue minutes, and that includes the transit time. And it is correct to try to put the time between driveways as part of that transit time.
And I think we're
It's
getting
at least consistent.
ahead, because I think Bob and Bertrand too, and as well as I, have come up with a good proposal for what we're going to do over the next couple of years to try and quantify what that transit time is. Because I wholeheartedly disagree that it's 10%, but I don't know what the number is. And just for simplicity, leaving what we did last year was why we stuck with 10. But I think we're going to be analyzing to try and quantify what transit time really is.
Yeah, it's also aggravated by the notification system. So when someone requests a driveway to be plowed, and if the PUD
no, there's no requesting system, Bertrand. It's a notification system. You got to start being honest about that.
I said notification.
No, you said request.
I said the notification system. Do you want to rewind the video to listen?
No, sure.
Yeah,
You
we'll
said
do that.
request.
I said notification.
Wrong.
Okay, we'll review that.
Okay.
So the next that I want to say is, if the PUD is sending an engine to do specific driveway, that actually implies a lot. I mean, depending where it is in the HOA, it could be a lot of time, actually way more time than the driveway itself. That's one thing. The second thing is, KMA has a lot of private driveway compared to the other HOAs. I mean, I'm not talking about East Meadow because they are built into their HOA, the driveway are built into the HOA contract. But for KMA, this actually represents quite substantial. So yes, I think we should spend time to assess the exact, not exact, but approximate transit time to the driveway for the future years.
And I agree with Bertrand that it's worth taking a look at this, because it's going to be different between the three HOAs. They're not all 10%. I'd like to recommend, for the purpose of today's meeting, that we have done everything we possibly could to make sure this data is consistent and right. I've sent it to Bertrand. He's very generously spent his time analyzing it, as has Eric. I'd like to recommend that we approve for these HOA numbers, because I don't know how to make them better. And I'm very happy to look at how we can make improvements in future years. But to try to figure out what those improvements are at this meeting, I don't think would be very productive.
Bob, are you proposing that we be open to making modifications for next year, or are you saying that we would wait 3 years?
Well, I think we have to do these things in order. The first question is to approve contract dollars for this coming fiscal year. And then we have the next item to talk about what we'd like to do in future years, where we have some specific recommendations. But I think we should first decide whether these numbers are the ones we're going to use for this year. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, yes.
And I would just caution, these numbers are based on estimates of how the year ends up. So they may change based on if there's an interfund loan and those sorts of things, which we'll know in the next week or so. So we'll have the real number set. The percentages is probably what we want to set, whether it's this one or whether it's this one. Pick one of these two columns, set the percentages, and then the numbers will be calculated once we have the final budget numbers, as Kelly talked about during finance, or during her portion 8A.
Are there any comments from the public? Eric?
Need any, Eric?
Okay. Well, every time we talk about this, I think I start out feeling clear about it. And as we talk about it, it feels more confusing.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah. In any case, does someone have a motion to make?
Do we want to do the driveways at the same time or do these separately?
I do
Can
at
we
the
do
same
it?
time.
I can't do it at the same time. They are very different systems. I have other comments I'd like to make on the driveway, so I really recommend that we do separately.
Um,
Well, I'll make a motion to adopt these percentages.
The
When we
90
say these percentages, the ones that represent the 90% for the 3 HOAs.
Yes.
Well, it's
Well,
my
that
motion,
was-
Bertrand,
it
so
was Standish's motion. Standish, is that what you meant?
let me give it some thought, but yes. So the far right-hand column.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? That was Standish. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Bob, I second it.
Okay, Peter, roll call, please.
Sure. Epstein,
Aye.
Rickard,
No.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, that passes 4-1. Now we'll go on to the driveway pricing.
And Eric, as president, your reservation is the denominator. Is that the issue?
The reservation is I don't understand the logic. I understand everything people have said. I've just got to somehow work it out in my mind that it seems logical. And right now, to be honest, it really doesn't seem logical, but I haven't worked it through in my mind. And believe me, I have given this a lot of thought over the last, well, since I saw it in the finance committee packet.
Yeah. But by the way,
and
I
I just
agree
don't-
with your reservation on the logic, but I also conceptually accept Bob Epstein's comments on transit time.
Well, what I certainly accept is that 3 people have put in a ton of time on this, which I really
Agreed.
appreciate. And I appreciate that how this has grown sort of organically over the last 4 years. This is where we are. I understand that. It's just that, and part of it, to be honest, for me, and I've said this before, but now I haven't made a big deal, is I don't think that the PUD should be in the business of contract driveways. And I think that contract driveways should be part of the HOA responsibility, not the PUD responsibility. And we can, then this would all make sense to me. We wouldn't be parsing between driveways and HOAs. It's just the time spent in an HOA is time spent in an HOA. And we have data that we could give to the HOAs about the driveways. They can do what they want. We know what East Meadows does, Standish. We know it's not fair, but it is what has always been done. And then transit time would be equally divided amongst everybody. And that would make total logic to me and make total sense to me. This whole thing with 60 individual driveway contracts every year, it just doesn't make sense to me. So that's also part of what we've spent so much time on this for something that I don't think we have any business doing. But that's part of my concerns. But let's move on now.
Yeah,
Thank you, Standish. Let's
I'd
move
like
on to.
I'd like to add one more thing.
the
Yeah, so
driveway
the
pricing.
reason we have an issue with these driveways transit time is because the way we compute we subtract the driveway time from the HOA time. And that's where all the problem is coming from. And what I suggest, so people don't get confused if we keep doing that. I understand your argument, Eric, and I think they are valid ones, so we could talk about that. But if the way to do it is actually to subtract, if we keep doing this offset of 10% or whatever number we find next year, if we do that, then we should actually suppress this 10% or whatever offset we find appropriate at the inception. So basically, when you come up with a total minute time, the same way that you remove the driveway time, you should also remove the transit time, and that would give you the minute within each HOA. And then we would not have this number moving for everyone because there will be no changes after that. So I think it's because we do it in 2 steps.
Yeah, I mean, what makes sense to me conceptually is that transit time between Loop Road and HOAs sort of be treated like G&A, like we treat G&A. And then that G&A is distributed amongst the HOAs, including driveways, proportionately. That would make sense to me. But in any case, that's discussion for a future day. Let's go on to driveway pricing now. B1 driveway pricing. Eric, do you want to say anything about this? Then we'll move to Bertrand, who wanted to make some comments.
Yeah, just to be clear, the derived average is based on the average time in each driveway, spent in each driveway. It's not based on number of trips. So they can vary based on size of driveway, the frequency of, we have to work around in driveways such as cars, that would lengthen the time. Also, anomalous hits, minutes too small or under a certain number of seconds are eliminated, and anything too larger than the normal maximum is also eliminated. So if a piece of equipment broke down, it gets tossed out of the derived average. I'll let Bob weigh in here because he's also behind this as much as I am. In the packet is a fairly precise definition of how we calculate that, which you're welcome to read. But the idea is, because we don't always capture the entry and exit of a driveway due to the small size and accuracy, we do have enough data to know what the average is, and then we throw out the ones that that appear abnormal, defined to be more than 3 times the average, or under 45 seconds.
I'd like to add that actually I applaud Bob on actually the implementation of this Dave average. It actually solved something that was absolutely unworkable. So just to give you an idea, when we look at the price of the contract to the actual minute spent for each HOA for the last season. So I'm not talking using the last year minute to the next year contract. I'm talking about last year minute and last year contract. We get a 98% correlation for the HOA, which is good. And that's why I voted to support these numbers. When I do the same analysis for the driveway, I'm getting less than 50% correlation. That's basically no correlation. So when I use Dave instead of the minute spent, then I'm going up to 80% correlation, which is good. It's still a work in progress, in my opinion. And I'm going to explain what exactly I think is. I think there is some maturity. We need sufficient data to finalize and fine-tune this algorithm and have enough data so we know exactly what to Dave for a big storm, for a small storm, for a cleanup. And we don't have that yet because we don't have enough data and we didn't collect it in this way for now. We could try to do something, but it's going to take some time and work. And I support the idea to work for this in the future year so we can keep moving. So, and that's why I think at this stage, so what I did two other things. I did look at the data when I used capped. And when I used capped, I did $100 cap or $200 cap. Then my correlation is actually moving up to 97%, which is almost in par with the HOA. So, as I say, I think this is the Dave system that Bob put together is solving a problem that was totally unworkable by using the total minutes. And so I totally support that. I still think we need to fine tune and improve upon it so we can get the same level of correlation between the actual time spent compute for HOA directly and compute via Dave for the driveways. So we get a decent correlation for that. And the correlation is looking at every driveway. So it's a global way to assess the accuracy of the data we work with. So this is my I started jump to the next topic is what my comments are. There are still some driveways that are falling apart, and actually they are subject to huge increase this year. And I don't think we have the maturity in the data today to actually think for that data to be reliable. And I can give you example, but let's just stop there and see what people think.
So let me just ask Bertrand. So a lot of what you've talked about is what we need to do to go forward. Are you saying that you support the numbers that are here for this year, given where we are, but you want to continue improving?
For the driveway,
yeah,
I would support what we have in the table if we have cap, because we're still only at 80% correlation, and we need to be at least at 95% correlation.
If we have what, Bertrand, I couldn't understand. If we have what?
Correlation. Correlation, basically looking globally at the data, we need to have a correlation between the minute we actually spend or computed to spend through the day to the contract price. So if we do have a good correlation, it says that we are charging fairly our customers. This is what we all want to do.
No, but what I was wondering is,
for the driveway, we are only at 80% correlation.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
What I didn't understand is if there's a motion to accept the pricing for the driveways that's in this table, you would say you would support it, but with the notion that it's got to improve as we continue on? Or are you saying that these are not the numbers that we should use and somebody should be doing more work on it before we approve it?
No, at this stage, I would accept the number if we put a cap on the increase. The reason I want a cap on the increase is because we don't have yet a good correlation. That means some people are unfairly charged. And I can give you an example.
Well, no, please, no, I don't need an example.
What
I want to understand then, if there were a motion to accept these, but with a cap of such and such.
Yep, I would support that.
What happens then to the money that's left on the table? Where does that money get paid?
It gets all the other driveways.
It gets reallocated. It's the same
the
thing.
Pay for their neighbor.
It's same things under HOA. The problem is it's not yet at the level of reliability that it should be. But we are getting way closer. I mean, I'm very encouraged by the progress with this method, and I think we'll get there. It's just that we are not yet there, in my opinion.
Okay,
got it. In my opinion, I don't see any correlation data in this board packet, and other than Bertrand's verbal remarks. And so on behalf of the Finance Committee, which considered this earlier this week, and unanimously recommends to the board that we adopt this recommendation without caps, I'm prepared to make that motion. And I make that motion.
I sent the data to Bob. I'm not part of the Finance Committee, so I cannot input in there. But I did send this correlation analysis to Bob, and I would expect that, I would appreciate if my work is not considered null.
Okay, so we have a motion by Standish, and that motion is to accept the numbers as they sit. Is there a second to that motion?
Can we have a little bit more discussion first? I'd like to respond to the questions. Or do you want to finish the motion first?
Well, I would like to know whether there's a second, and if there's no second, then the motion dies. If there is a second, then there can be discussion.
Yeah, I second the motion.
Okay, now we can have discussion. Bob?
So I agree with the correlation questions and the rest. So what I did, I took everything if there was going to be a cap, you cap both the upside and the downside. So let's suppose we set a cap at $300, just to make a number. Then there's 5 or 6 that would change. One of them, instead of getting a $400 reduction, it would be a $300 reduction. The largest one, which is a $650 increase, would then be a $300 increase. So you would have maybe $300 or $400. I guess you'd have about $500, $400 that would be redistributed to the other ones. Because we're using a $50 rounding, you either get $50 more or $50 less. If we were going to put in if we were going to talk about a cap, I'd recommend that we would use a finer resolution than $50. Otherwise, it's kind of lumpy, unlike the snow, which is powdery and wonderful.
Okay.
I went through for the 6 accounts that were larger or smaller significantly to understand why. And for each one of those, it was the fact that if we now have 4 years worth of data, although the first year's worth of data is the most suspect. So all of the ones that had a larger variation is because there was a significant difference between this last year and the original first year. And because we're doing 3 years of averages, that's the reason why it changes dramatically. So the question is that trend going to continue, or does it shift? But I agree that the correlation didn't work well, but I believe the reason is because of eliminating the first year, which was much less accurate. But again,
Bob?
We won't really know until we get more data.
Bob, would you like to suggest an amendment to the motion to Standish, or no?
No, I think it's worth our while to reevaluate at this point, to reevaluate each year and not just keep this static like we are with like I intend to recommend with the HOAs, but I do believe that it's accurate.
So you don't think a cap either way is necessary at this point?
I don't think the cap is necessary. I understand where the data came from.
Okay, so further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to give an example. One driveway was 500 one year, 1,050 the next year, and 1,600 in the proposed for this year. So here we are. The biggest snow year is only 500, and the year after with not too much snow is 1,050. And last year it's it's 1,600 based on the number. Okay, so
Which driveway are you referring to?
it's 21,358. And so what it shows that we are not mature enough at this stage. So I did actually find there was a significant increase for some driveway last year. And I wonder, since we had rookie snow operator last year, and that maybe they were learning the ropes. And so where these new employees were actually working could have an impact on the average. And so, as I said, I don't think it's mature. I think we should have cap. I would vote for a motion with a cap 300 if you want. I don't care about the number, but I think we need to moderate these extreme changes. I don't think they are consistent. We should not have an average changing so much between 3 years. I mean, one of them is 2-minute average 1 year. Second year is also 2 minutes, and last year is 5-minute average, and we don't even have much snow at all. So why do we go from 2-minute average to a 5-minute average last year? And there was no change. Yeah.
Okay, Bertrand, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Eric Rickard, can I ask that Eric Christensen comment on that driveway? We discussed this, in the finance committee meeting. I can't deal with minutes because there are no minutes presented on this page. Eric Christensen, can you comment on that driveway and the fairness of the proposed change, in your view?
Yeah, so that driveway was more in residence. So all I can say is that perhaps there were cars in the way that caused them to take longer time to work around, just based on them being in residence. But I don't definitively know that. I did look at all the anomalous ones. There was and all the ones that were large or that were very large, I looked at just to make sure I knew who those were. And I have no qualms about the pricing or the derived average for those larger driveways.
Do you know that driveway is there?
Is this 21847? Is that what we said?
No, he's talking about 21358.
21358?
Yeah.
Okay.
Eric Christensen, do you know that driveway or not?
I do. And I know there was more residency, but I don't know, because what I can tell you is there was variation in that driveway between generally from 1 minute to 8 minutes was the most, there were some 4 minutes, just pretty consistent. There's a lot of 7s, a few 8s, a lot of 4s. There's 115.
Yeah, and last year and the previous year, there was never such a long time. So why we are doubling or tripling the time this year versus the other year?
As I just said, if they were in residence more, which they were, perhaps there were cars in, which caused longer time to work around a car in a driveway. That does happen. If there's cars there and we have to work around them, it takes longer because you have to be careful because guys get fired when they hit cars. And so they're being very cautious.
Okay.
So this is,
Okay,
let me just make a suggestion, Eric.
Yeah.
So if we did consider a cap at $300, that would reallocate $1,200 from 5 driveways to the other 59, I guess. Would
Make
be
a
the
difference
number.
of about $20 then for driveway?
Well, if we went to $10 variations instead of 50,
Yeah.
and if it created harmony on the board, I could be persuaded if Standish was also.
I would support that, 300. And
Standard?
next year and the year after, we'll see how this evolve. But I think I'd be comfortable with the 300 cap.
I'd support that.
Okay, Standish, you'd like to modify the motion accordingly?
Yes.
Bob, you accept
So
that
the
as-
modification would be to say that no driveway can change more than $300, positive or negative, and that we should use a $10 rounding rather than a $50 rounding, but otherwise use the same as I love Bertrand's acronym, the same Dave. I love it.
Yeah, the same, Dave.
I don't
Okay,
understand what that means. And why
What?
are we changing to 50? I don't understand what the same Dave means, number one. Number two, I'm not opposed to it, but why are we changing to $10 rounding?
Well, the $50 rounding says this $1,200. First of all, because it's just, it'll make, in terms of reallocating the dollar amounts, they
Right.
won't land as hard. I mean,
Yeah.
people are either going to get an extra $50 increase.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're only going to get a $10 increase
Yeah.
as we reallocate.
All right.
That's
Okay, so
does that
we
make
have an-
sense?
Yes.
So we have an amended motion, and Bob, it sounds like you're accepting that to second.
Yes,
Okay.
and I appreciate Bertrand pushing on this. I think it makes us all a little bit better.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, then I'd like to go to a roll call vote.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Rickard,
For the same reasons the driveways, the HOAs, I'm voting no.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, passes 4-1. Let's move on then to B2, HOA and driveway allocations. Bob, do you want to take this, or Eric?
I'd be happy to take it. So I love being on this board, but my least favorite part are the discussions about about snow removal. And it's not any particular reason, but I was trying to think through what are we doing and how do we improve. And so I have a couple of recommendations I'd like the board to consider. And the most important one that I'd like to say is I'd like to have a document that explains exactly how we do the math. So a third party, given the data, could produce the same numbers we do. And I think one source of our confusion and sometimes contention is the fact that we don't all have a written definition. So Eric with a K and myself, we've started a draft of what that is, which you'll see in this document. But I'd like to recommend that we have a standard, well-documented procedure, and that every 3 years we review it, not every single year. So that's the first recommendation. And that for the purpose of the HOAs, I think our accuracy is good enough that we just keep the current allocations constant for the next 3 years and then reevaluate it. However, for the driveways, I think we could still do some refinements. And so I would probably modify this to say for the driveways that we'd recompute for next year in terms of the, because they are done differently because of the DAVE. Then the other things I like to do is procedural. I don't think it helps us to have the driveways have the operators take notes of everything they do. I'd rather have them just note things that are extraordinary for, and it's inconvenient for them to, the note sheets are inconvenient to radio them in. I would defer to staff the best way, but we would just ask them to comment on things that are unusual, mechanical breakdowns or other problems. And then the next step would be that some of the variation may occur because of the snow conditions. So I'd like to further develop a plan which says that under normal snow conditions, by the end of the plow period, every contract is done. For extraordinary conditions, not all driveways are done, not all contracts are done. And there's a definition in here. And then I'd like to figure out how we can use the computer systems to throw out exceptions at the end of each plow period that could then be evaluated so the curation can happen right away and not this painful process of, you know, sometime later to go back through a lot of data to figure out what was normal and what was abnormal. I think we can do something that's more efficient, assuming that Bertrand and I can kind of team up on this and do some data analysis during the season, not just at the end. So those are my recommendations.
Yeah, I would add one more, which is performance. I think over time, we are going to have a very good idea what an average time for each driveway in most typical conditions. And it'd be interesting to have a track of which engine and which operator is doing, and we could do statistics to see where things need to be improved or tuned and stuff like that. So I think one of the beauty of this GPS system is actually that not only we can get tracking, we can get notification when the driveway is done, but we could also do statistical analysis on where we need to tune or improve.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that as well. That there's a learning that we can get from this that may help us reduce our costs overall, just like we track everything else.
Yeah.
Let me add one other comment though, Eric, based on some of what you've said. And that is that, you know, for something like Palisades or Juniper Ridge, you know, if the HOA took over the responsibility for the driveways and the allocations, every driveway is done. That one's kind of simple.
Yep.
But if KMA took it over, for example, they would still count on us to provide some insight in what's fair. And it's even possible that East Meadows could decide to consider something that doesn't charge empty lots for or unimproved lots for not having their driveways plowed. So I think even if eventually the HOAs take over the contracting responsibility, they're still going to count on us to provide some insight into how to do the allocation. So I think it might be less contentious, but it's still going to be something where we'd like to provide some insight.
Thank you. Let's see if, so first of all, has a committee looked at this, or is this simply between Bob, Eric, and Bertrand? I know I looked at it early on at the first draft, but has there been a committee involved with this that we should?
Finance looked at.
Not yet. My recommendations are that we would adopt a policy that says for the HOAs, we'll use these percentages that we determine this year for the next 3 years, and that we evaluate every 3 years, and that we instruct the IT committee, the communications IT committee, to look at these other recommendations and figure out ways where we could have the system based more on exceptions and analysis that could improve the efficiency of the operations and reduce the staff time required to curate.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Eric Christensen, we did look at this in finance.
Correct.
And the finance committee was supportive of this memo.
Yes.
The only comment I disagree with is that there's a standard, that we will converge on a standard price per driveway. I've heard Eric Christensen in this meeting say that that particular driveway that had a proposed increase of greater than $300 was more work this year because there was greater occupancy and perhaps greater cars. And I know in the finance committee meeting, there was a fair amount of discussion about changes in driveway pricing due to ownership changes and occupancy changes. So I don't agree with that at all. And therefore I do support looking at driveway pricing every year and HOA pricing every 3 years.
Yeah, I agree with that, Stanish.
But may I ask a question? Doesn't driveway pricing and the minutes spent on driveways affect HOA issues?
Of
I mean,
course,
that's what we've seen. That's what we've just seen.
Yes, and like Bertrand commented, if we look at the data on a per route basis and not just at the end of the year aggregate, both Bertrand and I, I'm going to speak for both of us, believe we could come up with something that could figure out what's going on for each shift and adjust them for each shift. So for example, and I don't want to take up a lot of board time now, but I think between the two of us, we can look at the data, ask some questions, and come up with an estimate that's better than just a rough 10% at the end of the year.
But that wouldn't, if let's just say it turns out to be 6% or 7%, with the thought that it might go down, and I don't know if it will or not, but if it were to go down, then the HOAs would not get the benefit of that until, the 19 HOAs would not get that benefit for 3 years.
No, that's not necessarily true because the total minutes.
Oh, the minutes would change.
The total, the denominator would reflect it, would be more accurate.
The denominator would not go down as much, I see.
Yeah. It is true there might be room for some refinement, but I'd like to propose I'd still like to suggest that we keep it to 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just say that if we look at this and in December we realize, oh, this is crazy, and we discover something really grievous, I think we'd come back to the board and suggest something different. But my guess, and it's more than a guess, my educated opinion after 4 years of this data is we're not going to find a big variation on that.
Yeah, and if we approve this methodology, maybe we can still adjust the percentage for each HOA based on the result we have, and that would not change the methodology. The same way the minute change, the percentage driveway could offset could change, in my opinion, without changing the methodology.
Well, I certainly think this methodology is good. But for the same reasons I expressed before, I'm reluctant to bake in 3 years of something I don't understand fully. So I might be able to accept 3 years, but contingent on a midwinter or something like that review, just, as Bob just said, if something is found that's egregious or that would be significant, it would be interesting not to tie our hands to something that may not be as good as it could be.
Might I suggest, Eric, that we treat this like we discussed about treating the water rates? We set this percentage or allocation, and the board always has the option to adjust it in a future year, just like the rate study. We have 5 years of rate increases, but we may or may not do the full amount. Treat it like that, perhaps.
Okay, then at what point, Bob, do you think the Communications IT Committee, at what point in the winter or after the winter, do you think we should just plan on having a review of what you found as you've continued to refine and as you've used this methodology?
Probably by December, would be my guess.
Of course, December may not, we never know what December is going to be.
Yeah, but see, the advantage of what we're doing is we have 4 years worth of data, and we always have the original data, so we can take any algorithm we develop and rerun it on prior years.
Okay. Well, let me make a suggestion, because I was going to vote no on this if the whole thing were a package with a 3-year thing and so on. However, I could support this because I do support the methodology if we agree that the committee, the IT Communications Committee, will come back with a review no later than the end of January to either confirm or suggest that there should be some sort of a modification because of reason XYZ. Not to the methodology, but to the percentages.
Let me just defer to Bert. I think we can make that happen, but I'd want Bertrand's
I agree
as well.
So the alternative would be to go one more year before we go to the 3-year system. But I'm comfortable with what you propose, Eric. I think it's doable.
Okay, then I'd like to, if I may, as a chair, make a motion to accept these recommendations with a proviso that no later than January, the Communications IT Committee will come back to the board with a review of how well or poorly the percentages that would otherwise be 3-year percentages are holding up. So that's a motion. Is there a second?
The 3 years is for HOAs or?
It's only for HOAs, yeah. Originally, I thought it'd be for both, but based on the correlation analysis that Bertrand showed me, I think we should, I'm hesitant to say that the driveways.
Yeah, and as I've mentioned, I really don't care about the driveways, to be honest. I care about the HOAs.
That is honest.
That's fair.
That is very honest.
If driveways could all be $1,200 each for all I care, I really don't care. I care about the HOAs. So
understood.
Yeah. Anyway, is there? Haven't heard a second yet, so this motion will die unless there's a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Any discussion from the public? Any hands up?
Well, wait. We're going in the direction of 3-year pricing reviewed in January. Is that what we're saying?
Well, what we're saying. So what I'm reluctant to do is absolutely bake in 3 years. Now, any board can change these things at any time, but just to put some order to this thing, what I would like to do is to say, sure, if the percentages aren't changing very much, of the 10th here, 10th there, whatever, who cares? However, if there's some significant change in time and percentages by HOA, and if something happens with the driveways that says, whoops, it looks like the denominator is going to change, and it's going to change things in these ways, then I'd like the built-in flexibility, a planned flexibility, I'll say, that in the end of January we review that and have the ability to say, okay, nope, we're going to have to do this these calculations at the end of the year, at the end of the snow year, because things seem to be changing. Or no, they don't seem to be changing. They're really moving very little. That makes sense.
Or my two,
I have a question.
Yeah. Okay, Peter. Is that
Yeah,
Peter?
I'm still alive. How do you propose assessing new driveways?
We would look for, we would start out in the first year, look for something that we think is comparable to that driveway, something in the same vicinity, about the same size, and we do an estimate. But then each year we would revise it until we had something accurate.
Because I know that there's going to be a pretty challenging driveway coming online this winter on top of Dangberg.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll start out at $10,000 and then lower it $300 a year until we discover the right number. You'll love it.
with a 100% cap.
No. Yeah, we have to just start with an estimate based on our experience and then adjust it each year.
Okay.
Standish, did I answer your question?
Good question.
Yeah, I thought we were going in the direction of freezing it for 3 years based on the fact that there are small corrections or errors that don't matter in the greater scheme of things.
I think
However,
we're doing that for HOAs, not for driveways. However, we're prepared to say in January, if based on our analysis of how we would improve the driveway calculations, if that material changes the HOAs, we'd report that by January.
okay.
And that would be a reason to reconsider. But otherwise, I think the percentage allocations to HOAs it's quite close. If you look at the variation between this year and last year, it's very small changes.
Yeah, I still believe there is some HOAs that are still evolving. I mean, one of them is Unit 3. I mean, this is basically two fairly big parking pad for less than $1,000 or $1,000, which is way less than one of these parking pads could cost to HOA and homeowners. And also they are supposed to pay for half of the snow plowing of Oakwood up to their driveway. And so it seems that there is still some adjustment that are needed for some of the HOAs. So
yeah, we might find something.
Yeah.
We're
So,
just saying that we'll analyze it, and in January, if we find
Voilà.
anything that's material, we'd bring it to the board for consideration.
Yeah, and
With me.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I would just like a report, whether it's material or not. That's what I would.
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion, but, I think there is a second by Bob.
Yeah.
So any further discussion, either from the public or from the board members?
So just to clarify, we are only pushing for a 3-year freeze of the HOA contracts, assuming we don't have major material differences that we discover before January. Correct?
Correct. That is correct.
I support that.
Okay, Peter, roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay. Thanks for getting us through this difficult discussion, Bob, Bertrand, and Eric. Let's move on to item C, the 2020-21 budget and capital plan. So I guess, Kelly, you're up, and I'd also like a report from the Finance Committee.
Okay, so Standish had asked me just to point out what changes I made from the Finance Committee to this version. It was pointed out there might be an error on one of my spreadsheets, and there was, Standish. So that has been corrected. So you can now see, if you look at page 60 of your packet, you can see we're no longer missing the $2 million.
Thank you.
There was an error on my cash spreadsheet where I was adding instead of subtracting, or subtracting instead of adding. So that has been corrected. Also, the only other thing really that has changed was I added the operating cash summaries to each of the different funds. Other than that, all of the numbers are the same, and looking at the consolidated balance sheet and the consolidated income statements, those are more along the lines of a financial statement. And then again, like I said, I did add the operating cash summaries to each of the summary sheets. And we will work next year to make those summary sheets present more like a financial statement.
Good. Hey, Kelly and Eric with a K, I've sort of thought about this obviously since our Tuesday Finance Committee meeting, and I'm grateful for the correction that we found the $2 million. I would suggest two things. One is we collectively, the three of us plus the Finance Committee and the board, to the extent they want to have input, kind of go through our reporting packages and summary sheets. And, if there's anything we can eliminate that's not meaningful, let's eliminate it. For example, earlier today, we discussed income statement comparison year over year. And I was kind of thinking that didn't really make a lot of sense, but Kelly pointed out that this year, it showed a significant difference because of, the resorts operating season and COVID and residential occupancy. So that's suggestion one, which is we take a high level look at what we're doing and reporting and whether it can be eliminated or should be added to. And the second suggestion, and this is just things I'm throwing out for general discussion, is I think the financial statement we're missing. We have income statement, we have balance sheet, we have these summary sheets to the extent that they're valid. But what we're missing is a statement of changes in financial position prepared on a cash basis. And I think we probably should add the third conventional financial statement to our package. So I'll just throw those out there for discussion. We can either discuss them now or in Finance Committee. But my proposal is to get rid of the ancillary statements and to add a statement of changes in financial position prepared on a cash basis, which is the traditional third financial statement. Any comments?
My only comment is on the comparison, and I don't, excuse me. I believe I'm the one who asked for those comparisons a couple of years ago, and the reason I did was because, we have a budget, and then we're either under or over our plan. But to me, that didn't define whether we were healthy or not. I mean, it sort of depends on whether or not we're conservative with our budgeting or very liberal with our budgeting. Whether we're hitting budget or not is important to know, but it doesn't tell me whether or not we're, really financially healthy. And so I was like, well, it'd be nice to know how this compares to a year ago, for example. But I'm not, in any case, I think it's got some use. But I would still like to suggest that what you're saying is a good suggestion. It's always a good idea to review whether or not we've just done make work at some point, or what was useful at one time is no longer useful. And I would like to refer that to your committee and for a recommendation.
Specific is the summary sheets, Eric. My understanding, and Kelly and Eric with a K, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that these are sort of legacy holdovers from, if you will, the Michael Sharp era. And, if there are a lot of work to prepare and they don't mean anything, and I don't know that those are the case, I'm just suspecting it, maybe we don't do them. Eric, Kelly, any comments?
The summary sheets, granted, I inherited this, but from what I understood when they were created was to make it easier for the layman to digest the budget. Some people have a really hard time looking at, giant financial statements. They don't understand them. So it was kind of to bring it down to a level where somebody could look at the high level numbers and just understand it. And I think that's why those summary sheets were originally created.
Okay.
May I suggest actually we go one step further, is instead of presenting that with a lot of numbers, but have trends and plots basically showing how things evolve, that would make it even easier and faster for everyone to grasp.
I don't understand what you just said.
I'll say it again. So we, instead of having this table of numbers, which is very difficult to actually look at it in a quick way, if you had a trend and you plot these numbers, basically an histogram or a graph, that would actually show how this evolve and how consistent things are. And we would just, any discrepancy would just pop out. And it's very easy to do, actually. Once you are in Excel, you can use some function to put that in a graphic manner.
Well, I'd like to refer this to the committee. I think it's a good thought. And so I'd like to focus now on the budget and what statements, what documents we review monthly and also annually. I'd like the committee to discuss and make a recommendation. Is that okay, Standish?
Sure.
Let me,
that was added to the objectives of the finance committee at the finance committee meeting, correct, Standish?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So what I'd like to say is, if I can help, I'd be happy to put together a few examples of how this data could be easy to grasp. And so I'll feel free, I'm not part of the finance committee, but I'd be happy if you send me stuff, I could send you example of what could be done to make it easy to understand.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bertrand.
Let's go. I think one comment I'd add is that, you know, what we're required to account by our auditors in something called GASB, Government Accounting Standards Board. And, you know, part of the issues in this budget cycle are that the summary sheets are not prepared in that basis. And so, as both the Finance Committee has discussed and I've discussed with Eric Rickert, you know, there's some inconsistencies in the numbers. And so where I'm kind of going with this, Bertrand, is I'm not interested in one-off analyses that are not in compliance with GASB. I think it's just confusing, and I won't support it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I when I compare our statements with the audit statements, I get totally lost. I've gotten so used to our financial things that I love them. But I also know that, for example, when cities and counties provide something to the public, you can get to the detail if you want, but there are graphic representations of revenues and expenses overall, which I think are very nice. So anyway, it's all something to consider, and I appreciate the Finance Committee considering those things. Can we go back now to Kelly? Did you want to say anything more about the budget other than what you've said, or have you?
I mean, I feel like these are solid numbers. You know,
do you see any red flags any place? You or Eric or staff see any, or Finance Committee, other than the error that was found? Do you see any red flags other than the fact that the resort might not open?
In my opinion, no. I feel like this is, we've applied all the assumptions to all of the numbers, and I don't see anything glaring.
And Eric, once the budget's adopted and we have the correct cash flows out, we will be running those other scenarios that we did earlier on with the resort revenue dropping various percentages to see where that puts us in a cash flow position. So that will be coming back to finance probably in August once we have the new cash flows. So we'll be able to provide that. So we at least we know where we would be in certain scenarios.
I think the biggest thing that I'm wondering, well, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but the biggest thing that could impact the numbers that we have here, for example, on page 60 of our packet, the consolidated balance sheet, the operating cash line, I'm assuming that includes LAIF. Is that
Yeah.
that includes both LAIF and the,
It-
yes. And you notice that it drops from the 3s down into the 2s. I'm assuming, but I don't really know, but I'm assuming that those drops are because, and as well as the drops in the capital reserve fund, I'm assuming that those drops are associated with capital expenditures or
You're correct.
proposed capital expenditures. And that the hoped for financing is not included here. That
That's
would bring,
correct. But also the wastewater is not included either. So this is everything but wastewater, because we had assumed that wastewater capital was going to be financed. So I did not include that capital spending in those numbers.
You mean, so for the next 12 months, you're anticipating a drop of $500,000, even if the wastewater treatment plant did nothing there?
Correct. With the
And-
current capital
and-
spending not including.
And does this include, for example, well, okay. Guess I've got to look at the capital spending thing again.
It's not large.
The capital spending.
Right.
Capital spending absent the wastewater is, capital spending absent wastewater is, the wastewater is 500,000. So the total capital expense for project one, does that operating line include only priority 1, or is it priority 1 and priority 2 projects?
In fiscal year 2021, it only includes the green.
Okay, and it does not include the 500,000 of wastewater, so it's $300,000.
No, the green, okay, so on capital projects, $448,500 includes the projects that we're going to attempt to finance for next fiscal year. So that green priority number, 448, does include those. The total.
But I did not include that wastewater number in the capital spending, because it was going to be financed.
Right.
So I had said that specifically. I did not include that.
Right. And so the total green priority for the whole district are 827. So wastewater is about half.
Right. Well, it's 500,000 of it, right?
448. It's actually less
well,
than that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was just looking at the 501 that's up there.
No, I'm looking at the green priority 1 projects only.
Okay, well, I guess I'm a little bit concerned that with our revenue assumptions and sales assumptions and the resort opening and blah, 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 that we see then a $500,000 drop in cash. So that feels like a bit of a concern. Standish, do you have any thoughts on that, or?
Hell of a lot better than Tuesday.
Well, it's, you've got the relief of knowing that, but I don't.
Eric, candidly, I would support, both on my behalf as well as on behalf of the Finance Committee, adoption of this budget.
Mm-hmm.
Specific to your question, I don't want to say $500,000 is rounding error, but it's, within normal variation or noise, based on how I've seen this district operate for the last 8 years. Meaning there are a lot of things that could go for or against it. And of course, the mega trend is, whether the resort will operate and when.
Right.
So while I'm prepared to adopt this budget and recommend that, I think we need to improve our budgeting process next year. We're down in resources with Kimberly no longer being here. And I think that Eric and his team have hired somebody to perhaps fill that void. I consider this a just-in-time budget. In other words, in prior years, we've had it baked earlier than we have this year. And it's absolutely not directed at Kelly's efforts. It's directed at our resources. Having said that, on the positive side, I think that and that's not a negative, it's just a fact. I think the assumptions were refined and simplified this year in a hugely positive way that the board may or may not appreciate.
I agree. I think the assumptions have worked out well, and I think we discussed those, and I think they're good assumptions. And I think the analysis that Eric did and will do again, contingent on the resort, is important. The very first number I always look at in these budgets is the lower right-hand number on page 61, the net income or loss, to see how consistent or inconsistent that is with prior years. And this is entirely consistent with what we've always come up with, the negative 391. So my only concern, but I also have faith in the staff's ability to manage our expenses, is that drop in cash. I certainly not going to let that hold me from voting to adopt this budget.
And Eric, let me say further to that, which is drop in cash. I mean, the 3 rules of entrepreneurship is cash is more important than your mother. Is that that's why I suggested that we need to have a statement of changes in financial position prepared on a cash basis, because
Right.
I went through the exercise on Tuesday's finance committee meeting, basically saying net income, which is the bottom right line, less non-cash expenses, which are depreciation and amortization, should equal your cash flow. And that's not true, because it excludes financing, of which we're not planning any in these financial statements, but are planning to rebuild the wastewater treatment plant. And it also includes CapEx, which of course was not factored in there. That's why, I've made the remarks that I've made, which is what we need in terms of an additional financial statement. Plus, this is kind of in not the rounding error or the noise, but it's within management's ability to control, and they've done a very good job of that.
Yeah.
So I
good.
support this budget.
Sounds good. Other board members or public?
This is Bob. As part of the Finance Committee, I recommend adoption.
Thank you. Bertrand or Peter?
I have a question related to COVID-19 potential impact. So you mentioned Eric K. had made an analysis of potential impact for the future seasons. I didn't see it. Was it in the packet or maybe in the finance?
This was a couple board meetings ago.
Okay.
But we'll update it right once we get the new cash flows. If this budget is adopted, we'll have new cash flows out for 5 years. Then I'll redo the analysis, which it'll be a more up to date of what we did a couple months ago. Yeah.
So I would really recommend that we are proactive, because the odds for the next season are deteriorating at this stage. So I think that's a critical thing that we need to go through. Other than that, I'm okay.
Peter, any comments?
I'm as comfortable as you can be in this day and age.
Right. Yeah. Any comments from the public? I'm assuming no raised hands.
Not seeing anything, Eric.
Okay, then I would like to entertain a motion regarding adoption of this budget and capital plan.
So moved.
That's Standish.
I second.
That's Bob.
Bob seconds.
Okay, Peter, roll call.
O'Grady?
Aye.
Epstein?
Aye.
Rickert?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you. And Kelly and Eric, thanks so much. Kelly, I know that you've been overloaded, so thank you for doing this so well. Let's go on to D, Policy 380, investments.
This is just rote. It should be quite easy. So the board will recall we updated policy 380 to eliminate the quarterly review because nothing's changing. All we're doing is staying in LAIF. But we do have an annual review, and it was this to whether or not to stay in LAIF with what we're doing and how the funds are performing. And finance committee and staff reckons we stay in LAIF, and we just the board just needs to consider whether they agree with that recommendation. The current LAIF statement is attached as well, where it is, and I'll entertain any questions, but this is kind of what we were doing quarterly, and now we've eliminated it down to, or limited it down to annually.
What's the interest rate now that LAIF is offering?
I just sent that to Standish, and I can't remember. Did you remember, Standish, looking at that?
Sure. It's confusing, Eric Rickert. The answer is it's somewhere between 1.7 and 2.0 and percent interest per year. And the reason it's confusing is they report it on a kind of a year-to-date basis, a quarterly basis, and a weekly basis. But the bottom line is 1.7 to 2 is better than you and I can get anywhere.
That is true.
So both the Finance Committee and I recommend we accept staff's recommendation of continuing with LAIF.
Okay, and would you like to make that a motion?
Well, sure, but maybe other people have discussion or questions, but I'm prepared to make it a motion.
Are there any other questions or discussion? And for those in the public who are listening for something like this, just raise your hand if you want to say something. Otherwise, I'll move ahead. Anyway, I think Standish made a policy to accept the staff's recommendation regarding LAIF and the cushion of credit. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
That's Peter. Further discussion? Okay, roll call, Peter.
O'Grady?
Aye.
Epstein?
Aye.
Rickert?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. Unanimous.
Thank you. Let's go on to item E, policy 640 and regulation 640.01 and 640.02, discontinuance of services.
Eric, given the complexity of this one, might I recommend that we go ahead and do the PFC and 501c3 meetings now? We're really close to 10 o'clock instead of stopping in a very complex issue.
That sounds good. And the customer survey might take some time too. So let's go on to item G, power content label submission.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Is that what you meant?
Oh, no, I meant just to switch over to go ahead and do the
let's wait. We got 12
board.
I'm on a roll here, Eric.
Okay.
We're 12 minutes ahead of what I thought we'd be.
I don't want to interrupt your roll. I'm good.
God.
So you want to go to power content?
Yeah, let's go to power content and then possibly a shell contract extension if we can fit it in.
I think that's a good idea. Okay, there we go. I'll turn it over to Brandy.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Brandy.
So this is our annual power content label and power source disclosure that we are required to put together and post on our website. No real surprises in this one. As in general, most of our electricity comes from unspecified sources off the grid, 98.3%. The other 1.7% was produced at the powerhouse. And so if you take a look at the proposed power content label, which is, it's on page 8 of the proposed annual template. What you see is what we've seen in the past. Basically, we procured 110 megawatt hours through the year. Of that, 1.7% was powerhouse, the other was unspecified power. What's new this year is the bottom line where it says percentage of retail sales covered by retired unbundled RECs. And this is how we meet our renewable portfolio standards requirements. We have purchased RECs, but we did not retire any in 2019. So this says 0%, and that will be what our report this year says. For 2020, that is when we intend to retire all of these RECs, both the ones that we purchase for compliance and the ones that the community purchased voluntarily as part of our program. So in 2020, you'll see that percentage be much higher than 0. So I would be happy to answer any questions on this. What we do with this once it's approved by the board is we submit it to the Energy Commission and we post it on our website so that our customers can see this.
Brandy,
Go ahead.
oh, I know, Bertrand. Go ahead, please.
Just a semantic question. What do you mean by retiring RECs?
So the process is we purchase renewable energy credits that are connected with power that's introduced into the California grid. Those go into a Regis system, which is a tally system for the state. And once they're in our account, we retire them so that they're used once and only once and can't be reused. And so we have those, we have some in our account now that we were approved and we purchased already, but we have not in 2019 retired any.
Okay. Thank you.
If somebody were to look at this and basically, let's just say somebody's really concerned about our use of renewables, wants us to be sure that we are using some decent percentage of renewables, and somebody were to look at this, what would they think?
They wouldn't understand it.
Yeah,
they would.
It's not designed to be understood. It's designed for compliance.
Yeah.
It is a template that is provided by the state that it comes in an Excel sheet that is not formatable. We could explain this to people somehow, but we cannot change the form.
No, right, I understand that. What I'm wondering is, it's just because this is more of a communication to our community.
We always add an explanation.
We always in the newsletter with an explanation as well as the report.
That's what I was going to suggest. Thank you. It's just that I know that on our purchase of the power that we're in compliance, what are we at 33% or something now? Mm-hmm. Plus we have the voluntary RECs and offsets. Well, the offset's a different thing. But I would just like to let the community know that we care about the renewables. And we have two ways of doing it, both the compliance way and the voluntary way. I'd just like that communicated.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be in the newsletter again, and the annual report. We do it every year, but just have to wait for approval from the board before we can do them.
So we need a motion then to approve this to send off. Is that right?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Peter. Motion by Standish. Okay, roll call, Peter.
Rickert,
Aye.
Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Thornbrook, aye.
Eric, do we have time for shell contract, or do we want to go on to the?
Yeah, I think we do. The shell contract should be again just by rote.
Okay.
Should be pretty straightforward.
Let's go to shell contract because I think we discussed it once already.
We did, and I'll let Brandy take it, but this is just, again, we did an RFP a few years ago. Shell beat the only competition substantively. Staff recommends we stay with Shell until such time as we get into WAPA, but this contract only goes through 2023 and WAPA is not available to us till 2025.
Thank you. Any questions or discussions from public or board?
Finance Committee considered this and unanimously recommends the board approve it.
Great. Any other discussion? Is there a motion to approve this recommendation?
So moved.
Was that Peter? Yeah, Peter.
Yes.
Second? Was there a second
Bob
to that?
seconds.
Bob seconds it. Okay, roll call, please.
Rickert,
Aye.
Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Thornbrook, aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what we're going to do now is continue this board meeting for, it's now almost 10. What do you think, Eric, 10:30 or 10:45?
I think 10:30 should be plenty of time.
Okay,
We're
well,
gonna
we're all
stay-
going to stay on the same Zoom, so anybody who wants to stay on and listen to these other two meetings are welcome, and then come back to the open portion of this board meeting. So we'll approximate 10:30, did you say, Eric?
I think that's reasonable.
Approximately 10:30. So this meeting is now continued, and we are now going on to the annual meeting for the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department, a nonprofit public benefit corporation, and Eric Christensen is actually going to take this over.
I am. So call the regular annual meeting of the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department nonprofit public benefit corporation to order. Roll call of officers. So Peter, it's you, myself, and Jeff Smith. So if you want to do the roll call, Peter.
Christensen,
Here.
Smith,
Absent.
absent. Dornbrook, here.
Excellent. So we'll entertain any comments from the audience. Let me make sure I'm sharing this properly. Are you seeing the volunteer firefighter agenda, volunteer fire department agenda? Everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. The first item of business is to review and approve the minutes from April 13th, 2019. I'll entertain a motion to approve, Peter.
So moved.
And since I'm the only other one here, I will second that. All those in favor, Peter?
Dornbrook, aye.
Christensen, aye. Smith, absent. Okay. Federal, state, and filing tax obligations. I'll entertain a motion to file those. I'll scroll to it so everybody can see it. That we file them as included in the packet.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Smith, absent. Okay, election of officers and directors. I'll entertain a motion, Peter, for directors from you.
Yes, I move that we appoint Eric Rickert, Peter Dornbrook, and Eric Christensen to be the board, the members.
I will second that. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Conflict of interest policy. Annually, we have to renew this. It hasn't changed from the prior year, but we are required to submit these to Secretary of State's office. So this will need to be filled out. Eric, it's similar to what you already do for the board. So it's, and then any of our officers, which would be Kelly and Jess, also file them. So I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Now you're on the board, Eric. You can second it if you want.
I'll second that motion.
All right.
I'm honored.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Rickard, aye.
Christensen, aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay. One thing we do want to discuss under general discussion, and it's not on the agenda, but there was a request from the district finance committee they offered to review the KVFD financials now that they're getting a little more, getting larger. My recommendation is that we take them up on that offer and they periodically review the KVFD financials on behalf of the 501c3 corporation and report to the 501c3 any questions, concerns, or suggestions for improvement as we go on, since we only meet annually.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, now that there has been some real flow in, I think it's a great idea.
I concur with that.
Okay. And I don't think we have to make it in the form of a motion because it'll just be a courtesy review by the finance committee of the district. So we'll start doing that. And Kelly has started, just an FYI, she has started, she has imported it into PCS and will be able to generate as she does for the district financials from that as well. So it'll be a same format that everyone's used to seeing. So that'll be
They're in the packet. the financials I've created are in the packet. So.
Right. Okay. Any further business? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn until April 10th, 2021.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Let me close this now and let me share the next one, which is, okay. Oh, where'd you go? Where did you go? Why are you not? Technical difficulties here. And there it is. Share. Okay, is everyone seeing the PFC agenda?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, now we're back to the full board here, right? Our full board.
No, I believe it is just 3. This is what was from the last minute, so it is you actually you're not on.
But Jeff is absent.
Jeff is absent, so it's Peter, myself, and Kelly.
Right.
The officers. So actually, I guess it'll be me or Peter call it to order because we're going to in. So that's actually Jess had that wrong. So I guess I'll call.
Yeah, you call it to order, Eric.
Okay, I'll just call it to order. Roll call.
Smith, absent. Dornbrook, here. Christensen.
Here.
McBride.
It's you, Kelly.
Here. Am I muted?
No, I hear you.
I just, like, my screen just went all wonky. Sorry.
Okay, I heard you. Okay. Any comments from the audience? Seeing none. Okay. First action item of business to review and approve the minutes from April 13th, 2019. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Eric, can I just point something out?
Yes.
So in the minutes, it says directors present. In accordance with the bylaws, the directors of the corporation shall be members of the board of the directors of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District. Present were Rickard, O'Grady, Dornbrook, and Epstein.
Okay, so maybe it's just the officers that need to change.
I think that's right.
Okay.
I think this is
take
the full
over.
board.
I'll happily step aside.
I do think this is the full board. So is everybody here still from the board?
I am.
I'm here.
And Bertrand, are you here? I'm not looking at participants.
I'm Bob Epstein's listening.
Okay, and Bertrand?
Is offline.
Okay, so Bertrand has stepped away. Okay. So we have a quorum, however. So I'm going to say, can we, Peter, can we redo the roll call, please, for the full board?
Sure. Rickard.
Here.
Epstein.
Here.
O'Grady.
Here.
Perot. Absent. Dornbrook here.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the audience? I think that was already asked. Hearing about no hands being raised, we'll move on to action items. The first is the review and approval of minutes of April 13. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes, or are there any comments?
Yeah, I move that we approve the minutes from May 12th. Is that the right date?
April 13.
April 13th.
2019. April 13, 2019.
Excuse me. Yeah, April 13, 2019.
I second.
So the motion was made by Peter. The second was Standish.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Rickard.
Aye.
O'Grady.
Aye.
Epstein.
Aye.
Perot. Absent. Dornbrook. Aye.
Okay, the next item is the election of directors and officers. Well, the directors are the board, so that according to bylaws, duties of the officers are listed, and based on the duties that are listed, staff recommends approval by motion to elect the following officers: Eric Rickert, President; Peter Dornbrook, Secretary; Eric Christensen, Executive Officer; Kelly McBride, Chief Financial Officer. Is there a motion to accept recommendations for officers?
So moved.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Bob.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Bob, you take it.
Bob seconded.
Thank you, Peter. So generous.
All in favor, please. Roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot, still absent. Dornbrook, aye.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you're here?
I didn't understand. I was called. Let me just.
Okay.
So aye.
All right,
Okay,
it's unanimous.
let the minutes show that Bertrand has joined the meeting. We'll go on to item C, the Goodwin Consulting Group's continuing disclosure report. Eric, is this something that needs to be approved, or is it information?
I would recommend that the board accept the Goodwin Consulting report as submitted.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, I'm curious, does everyone know what the purpose of this Public Facilities Corporation is and what the financials refer to? Is everybody clear on that?
No.
Eric, can you explain? Just
Yeah,
briefly.
so
briefly explain.
the PFC was formed in order to finance some debt and sell some certificates of participation for infrastructure improvements, and I believe it was 2008. Is that correct?
2005.
2005. And so we just have to meet annually as a board. There's still money, and most people will refer to this as the Mellorews, which is common nomenclature. It's a little incorrect, but it's close enough. And we report on that annually, and we still have some money in that.
So Bertrand, what this refers to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric or Peter, because I know Peter was involved with this. When the wastewater treatment plant capacity had to be expanded because of the developers at the time, the resort's intention to expand, like into Palisades and other developments, the increased capacity had to be funded somehow. And the decision was that those who would be creating the need to expand capacity should pay for it. And so these bonds were issued to pay for that capacity increase in the treatment plant. And those properties are now subject to paying off the bonds, making payments on that financing. And that's what this is about. Is that correct, Eric? That's the Mellorews.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we could issue will serves for the expansion of the valley, basically.
Right. Okay, Bertrand, that's
Yep.
a brief summary of what this is about.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any comments on the Goodwin report? I guess number of delinquent parcels 6 is not too bad, given the amount seems pretty small. I think it's been larger in some past years.
Goodwin actually asked us if we wanted them to pursue those, and I think it was about 6 months ago, and I think they reduced it. We directed them to go ahead and do that, and I think that's why it was reduced.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to hear a motion to accept the Goodwin Consulting Report's continuing disclosure annual report for tax and enterprise revenue certificates of participation for 2018-19.
So moved.
That's Peter. Is there a second?
I second it.
That's Standish. Roll call.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Rickard,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Thank you very much. We move on to item 5, general discussion. Any questions or discussion about the PFC? And if not, then I'd like to adjourn this meeting until Saturday, April 10th, 2021.
I'm always a bit slow.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. So if the Kirkwood station become reality, would that be subject to that or not?
It depends if that parcel participated in the original formation, if they obligated their parcel or not, which I do not know the answer to that. I'd have to look at the role of all the assessor parcel numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a modification to this, to the parcels, what, about 5 years ago or so? I can't remember exactly when. That's when one of the provisions of the Vail purchase from the then owners, the Cobb Group, was that there'd be a modification so that the parcels that were basically ski slopes that would never be developed would be removed from the Melrose district,
Okay.
and adjustments be made to all the other parcels. Now that map will show whether or not the parcels across the highway were part of Melrose or not. I don't remember either, but it's something that would be easily found out because the parcel map would show it.
That's something we should get clarified, probably.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good question, Bertrand. Thank you. So maybe we can have that clarified for the next annual meeting. Anything else?
Or even maybe for the next planning committee meeting.
Yeah, this was all done in the planning committee, by the way.
Okay.
So that's
So
a
we'll
very
put
good
that.
point.
That will put on the agenda.
Yeah, just a clarification of which parcels are in the Melrose district.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other discussion? If not, now we will adjourn this meeting till April 10th, 2021. Now, can I ask, does anybody need a break?
I was.
No,
I could
okay.
use one.
Okay, it's now about 10:50. Let's come back at 10:20. Is that okay?
That works.
Okay, 10:20, we'll
That's
come
good.
back and we will pick up on the board meeting. Thanks.
Hey, Peter, quick question for you
Sure.
on operations committee. So as you know, Derek's on vacation next.
Right.
So we don't have a report back on where we finished out on those 2017 videoing and whatnot for wastewater. So that
All
won't
right.
we won't have that ready. So it'll be general updates. Do you want to keep ops on, or do you want to cancel? I don't really have anything to report except for just kind of status updates, unless you had something you wanted to add to the agenda.
No, I think we could cancel that meeting.
And then we'll have the report back. One thing.
Yeah, because that's more important, I think,
Yeah, and then
than having it in 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. I just wanted to check with you since I had
No,
you.
that's fine with me.
All right. I'll let you take your break now because I need one too.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Eric, are you back yet?
Yes, I think only Peter's the only one that's not back yet. And maybe, oh, Bertrand's back. Yep. There he is.
Okay. So Eric, did you say Peter is not back yet?
No, he's back.
I'm back.
Oh, back. Peter, good, thanks. Okay, let's reopen this meeting now, or resume the board meeting. And we are now on item 8E, policy 640 and regulation 640.01 and 640.02, discontinuance of services.
Okay, so this, as I explained to finance, this got a little more convoluted due to some things that needed to be cleaned up as I got into it. So I'm going to start with the most important thing, which is what we originally wanted to do relative to the last rate study, and then I'll work my way back. It's like I said, it's going to get convoluted, so please interrupt with any questions. Don't wait till the end. So the bulk of what we wanted to change was D and E, and you all can see my screen again.
Yes.
And had to do with the temporary suspension the board desired to incorporate into irrigation. So what we did is we modified policy, or we're proposing to modify policy 640 to accommodate that. And so what we did is residential irrigation service may be suspended by the customer for any singular consecutive duration during the period of July 1st, 2020, and we will make this retroactive if anyone wants to do it retroactively, through June 30th, 2022, that 2-year period. During the suspension, the customer shall not accrue any additional base, meter, or usage charges for the residential irrigation service. During the aforementioned period, the customer may request to restore their residential irrigation service, upon which base, meter, and usage charges will recommence. There shall be no labor charge for suspending or restoring the suspended residential irrigation service during this period. Should the customer not reconnect by June 30th, 2022, the service shall be deemed terminated as per section, which is up here, which is has been updated based one, just to update the nomenclature we're using for everything else, including the rate study, and then added the section about the residential irrigation, how they can suspend or terminate. And so that was the first component I did. So let me stop there and ask if there's any questions on that.
I did have a question. It's in the first 2 lines of E.
Okay.
I had not actually understood that it would only be for one period of July 1, 2020 through June 30th of 2022. So let me just pose a hypothetical situation. Let's say a house is built. I mean, I know this is a requirement in East Meadows. Somebody's typing and I can hear that. So maybe mute if that's the case. The hypothetical would be, let's just say in East Meadows, where restoration of the natural landscape is a requirement. Let's say the house is built and is finished in 2023 or 2024, and so they need the irrigation in order to restore the hillside, and it probably will take 2 or 3 years to do that. And once it's restored, there's really no need to continue to irrigate. I thought the intention was that anybody could suspend their irrigation. I didn't realize there was just one block of time in which this could happen. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I think the only reason we implemented this was because of the current change to residential. So if somebody built in 23, 24, they could make the decision, did they want to get it knowing full well what the rates were without it being a change for them, or if they want to just irrigate off their domestic. So the whole reason I thought we did this is because it was a change for existing irrigation customers, not future. There'll be no surprise for future. They know what they're getting into. But we could change it. This is just, I mean.
Well, what you're saying is let's just say this hypothetical house is done, and they go ahead and have the separate irrigation, and for 3 years they're irrigating and it makes financial sense, they could still terminate. They just couldn't they wouldn't not have the grace period to put it back on at no cost.
Correct.
Okay, so they could still terminate after things are restored.
Yeah. Just
Got
like,
it. Okay.
just like under, yeah, D.
Okay, you're right. Okay, that's good.
Well, on that front, yeah, I'm talking. Can you remember us what are the connection fees for irrigation, and is there a termination fee also?
I don't recall that off the top of my head, no, and we do need to revisit those. That's something that's come into planning, as you'll recall, Bertrand. So
yeah. I'm just talking about the irrigation, so I don't have a sense of the magnitude. So
yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head either, but I can definitely get that to you, and it should be on our website as well, the connection fees.
But there's no cost of termination, though, I don't believe, is there? I've never.
There is a labor component and a cost to remove the meter and lock it off and those things, yes, and to abandon it properly.
So in the current version that you send us in the packet, you actually remove a fixed cost. You say it's up to the board. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I follow your question, Bertrand. I'm sorry.
So on the termination fee,
yes,
it used to be $50, I think, except there is more than 1 hour of labor. I think that's the language I remember. So, and you remove actually the exact amount of 50 to put a sentence saying that the board will revise connection fee every year.
Right, yeah, because this has been discussed. Basically, the district has never adopted its miscellaneous fees, which it's supposed to do annually, and it's never been done. That's one of the things that we're going to be bringing to the finance committee is all these fees. So the hydrant meter fees and connection fees and termination and shutoffs and those things will all need to be revisited by the board and adopted. So that's why I left it that way, that it would be the annual adoption of the board. You're right. Yeah, that's why I did that though.
Yeah.
And it may be $50, but this way it can change with board annual action and not having to revise regulations every year.
Yeah. So the reason I was asking, because I didn't remember that coming up as a topic anytime. So I was just surprised.
It has not. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
It's on the list of things to do now that Kelly has some relief.
Okay.
Good for Kelly. Okay, are any other questions on this aspect of what's before us, before Eric goes on with the other things?
Let me add one more thing. Actually, at the planning committee, the last planning committee, we had a discussion on the connection fees in general and the philosophy behind it. I know what we want to do is to recoup the investment the community has made that make possible for new people to connect on. I think that also need to be blended with the support for economic growth. So planning committee is going to look at that in the future. And I wish we could do that analysis before the board is actually tackling the new connection fees.
Yeah, and I should be clear, miscellaneous fees are not the same as connection fees, Bertrand. So connection fees are a whole different animal. And that's a different, I'm talking about how much it costs to rent a hydrant meter, for example.
Yeah,
that helps explain it a little bit.
Agree.
Okay, Eric, I think you can continue with.
Okay, appreciate that. So I just want to make sure that captured the essence of the board's comments. So it sounds like that's good. So by changing this policy, two things had to change. So it changes this regulation. And one thing relative to this regulation that's been hanging out there that we needed to do is the state has issued an edict for water shutoffs and how they are to be handled. So I'm going to skip over what I did to 640.1 for the time being, and I'm going to move to 640.2. 640.2 is from District Council. This is the verbiage that has to be in there. Per the state legislation that was passed, which is now a law. And so if you see some anomalous things like we have to publish our stuff in Tagalog, or Vietnamese. This is a state requirement, not anything that we added just for fun.
As long as they want to build a house, it's fine.
Yes, we welcome it. But this is something, and ComCom is going to be discussing this, and we're going to be using Google Translate, I believe, is what we're going to be talking about and how we might do it.
I thought we decided assigning one language to each board member to learn.
I
I'll
take
take-
French.
I know how to say
I
that.
volunteer for English.
All right, Tagalog goes to Standishton.
Okay, there you go.
So I'm surprised Tagalog is required and not French, I have to say.
Between you and Christian and your respective spouses, you could be hitting 10%, Bertrand. You might
No,
be.
actually, there is more than that. You are totally
Those are the ones I know.
underestimating the French lobby.
And honestly, if it is more than 10%, we're required to do it. And
Yeah, we'll see.
I'll leave it to you to tell me if we hit that threshold, Bertrand, because I only know you
Okay,
and Christian.
sounds good.
You're the only ones I can speak French to in my terrible French. So this is the policy that's required. It has to do with shutoffs for residential water service. This is domestic service. And there's a whole lot of requirements in here. We have new notices that have to go out, which I have those from district council as well, that we'll be updating our notices. But this is our new policy. And we can debate it, but really there's no debate if we want to be compliant with state law. So that's what 640.12 is. So what that means is I had to go revise 640.1 substantively. And basically what I did is I just cut and paste for the most part what we have in 640.2 where it was relevant. We don't have to have the policies in all those languages. So that's one thing I deleted in this, because this applies to residential irrigation, water, wastewater, and solid waste, which is what the policy originally was for, plus domestic water, which I separated out. I did, just for consistency again, cut and paste from 640.2, the notices, the posting. I did get rid of the 10-day notice because that's just an additional effort and labor for the district. So I removed that. I removed anything relative to residential domestic water because that doesn't apply to this. And just made some general changes, defined service to mean solid waste, residential irrigation, and wastewater. So it's just service now, not residential service, just service, because it's defined up here. Oops, up here. And just tried to make consistent changes. So all these deletions were just for consistency with that. Some things that were unique, I left in. This really has to do with solid waste being a voluntary service. So that is going to be left in for the time being until we consider it mandatory. And then this, I think, is Bertrand, what you were referring to, the reconnection set by the board. This goes to the miscellaneous charges. So that's why that's in there. And I know it looks like I made a lot of changes, but I know you also like to see track changes, but that's basically what I did. And that's a lot to digest, but I'll entertain questions.
Did Dick Shanahan review this at all?
This is from Dick's office. So
640-02.
640.02 is from Dick's office.
But I'm talking about the one that you made all the changes to 640.
Oh yeah, 640.1. Yes, because I sent him these back, and he said that's I just
he didn't find any problems.
No, he gave me a template, and I stuck his template in, and I gave
okay.
That was that.
The Finance Committee considered this at length earlier this week and recommends adoption.
Great. Any more discussion? Anything from the public? Anyone public? Okay. So hearing of no one from the public. Any further discussion by the board?
I propose we adopt, make a motion we adopt 640.01 and 640.02 as presented and recommended by staff.
This is Bob. I second.
Okay, motion by Standish, second by Bob. The only thing I want to say is thank you, Eric, for being so thorough on this. Appreciate that. Okay, I guess roll call unless there's further discussion.
Rickert?
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Great. Thank you. Nice. Good. Okay, let's move on to item F, customer survey.
So, and maybe Jess is not here today, but the ComCom did consider this and made some suggestions, which we've incorporated. So it's been reviewed by them, and very similar to last year with some, removed some questions that were no longer relevant, added some new questions, especially about the renewables. But if anyone has any questions or suggestions for changes to the questions themselves, otherwise this will go out very soon to all our customers.
Are there any substantive changes that you'd like to point out? I mean,
I can mention that there's just a handful. 2 years ago, we asked whether people were interested in a different time and date for the board meetings. So we dropped that. We asked for a little bit more feedback this year, first on who's using renewables and do you plan on using them to increase awareness. And then we also added an evaluation for the playground, since that's one of the services we provide. And otherwise, we tried to make it the same as previous years. There's one other question we added, Eric. What's on the next page?
Oh, sorry, 27.
Yeah.
No, that was the same.
Yeah. So that's it. And we each of the committee members went through the survey and provided corrections on spelling and things. So the changes were small.
great.
And Bertrand, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yes.
Because you looked at it. Yeah. Yeah.
First is on the timing. So if it's going, we're on 11 today. So let's say it goes on next week. So we're only giving 2+ weeks for people to respond.
About a month. We're giving a month.
Yeah, that's what we say here. It's August 1st. So at the very beginning, it say people need to respond by August 1st.
We'll adjust that, Bertrand. Thank you.
Okay,
for catching
so
that.
that's one thing. The other thing is it's a lot of questions, and but actually many of them have values for the district. So I didn't object, but I think it's just a lot of questions for people to go through. So now that people are confined or semi-confined, I think maybe that's a good time to ask many questions. But I wish we had, we try to be a bit more condensed. Yeah, but I'm okay for this year.
Last time we got about 70 responses, and the average time was less than 5 minutes, I think.
Okay.
I could look it up.
Yeah.
See what it is.
I can't remember. Is this all electronic, digital now, or do we send it by paper at all?
We do both.
Yeah, we do based on their preference in their billing.
Oh, okay.
But if they get paper and then they send it back, then we manually enter it into the system for them.
Yeah,
Right.
well, we only got 3 paper last year, Bob.
Wasn't a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we are getting about 10% response. That's what you are saying?
Yes. And some people did try to multi-respond as well, Bob, as I recall. They tried to do the survey multiple times.
Uh-oh, interesting.
Well, we catch that and consolidate.
Yeah.
So is it different people or different account?
It's more than one person using the email. We just check for duplicates. When we email it out, we put in a random code to it. And if that random code gets used more than once, then we know that it's been done more than once. It could be, we don't know who's done it. We just know that the link on that email has been used more than once to complete it.
Yeah, but okay. So the mailing list we have is to account owners, 1 email per account, or multiple person per account?
Multiple people.
Yeah, so if you have someone like 3 people own a property, all 3 people can vote. I mean, survey.
All people, yeah, all 3 could complete the survey. So, yeah.
So that means we even have a less than 10% response rate.
Of properties, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah,
properties.
because we deliberately don't try to track it, we don't know answers to questions like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Eric, do you want a motion to approve of this survey to be
I don't think we
sent
need.
out, or I don't think we need?
Consensus is it's good. We'll just proceed with it.
Okay.
It was just more to make, if in case the board had wanted to add or delete something, and
Yeah.
just make them aware of what we're doing.
Great. Okay. There's no further comment. Did anyone else, no one from the public? I think I saw Cheryl on the participant list initially. I don't know.
Cheryl and An both reviewed it as part of the comp committee.
Okay. 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 Then we can move on to item I, performance reporting and aquifer levels.
All right, so the end of the fiscal year, here we have June totals. If we look at electric, our production or purchase off the grid was 437,000 kilowatt hours, 17% unidentified system losses. And that takes us to 12% for the year, which was what our goal was for the year for electric. For propane, we had an odd month in propane because we were doing the valve switch out, so we completely emptied one of the tanks. You can see here that we had a delivery usage of 626,000 cubic feet, a loss of a positive 11%, which takes us to our year-to-date ending total of negative 2% loss in propane. So still negative.
And we did flare off. That's a lot of it was flared off.
Flare off. For about a whole 8-hour shift, we had a flare going by the propane tanks. So that was exciting.
S'mores. You made s'mores, right?
I'm sorry, what's
You made
that?
s'mores, didn't you? Have a
Yes,
s'mores, yes.
it was good times.
So November was the month where we had the biggest shifts, huh?
Yes.
Yes.
So we don't have any interpretation on what happened.
No, propane really is a difficult one for us. It depends a lot on usage of the system, temperatures, temperature here and down below where they fill the tanks. So we see a lot of fluctuation in propane month to month.
Okay. So in the end, it's only 2% off. So.
And it is traditionally around
Yeah.
positive, negative 2% is pretty normal.
Yeah. Thank you.
If we take a look at water, the monthly production from our wells was 822,000 gallons. We had a loss, unidentified system loss of 17% in water, taking us to 13% loss for the year, compared to our goal of 15%. So pretty good, on track there at least. And then last,
Brandy, may I ask a question? This is really of Eric, I guess. Eric, I think you were doing some sort of a study on the water system, weren't you? That may help us understand where these losses are occurring.
Right. So one thing we're working on is a water model of the system.
That's what it is. Yes.
Define how it operates. That's still in process. We did most of the flow testing last year. The weather did not cooperate where we could finish it, so that's going to be resuming here soon, and then we'll understand how the system operates better. It won't necessarily tell us where the losses are, but it will let us know how our zones are actually working, our pressure stations are working, and then from there we can go to the next step of trying to identify where those losses are. I would also add that there is some legislation worming its way through right now through the state that Aqua and CMUA are both tracking that would be very onerous on small districts like us in terms of water loss. We don't know how that's going to come out. Both of the entities have opposed unless amended on the legislation. So we'll be tracking that, but if that does pass in its current form, we will need to accelerate identifying these losses and mitigating them, and it will not be cheap to do so. So just be aware that's coming down the pike. I am tracking that legislation. I was just on a legislative call that was talking about that, amongst other legislation. So just making you aware that we may have to do something drastic, but we don't know yet.
Thank
So
you.
should we add that to the planning committee, Eric?
Yeah, I was going to just give an update on legislation at the next planning committee, generally, because there's quite a few things, and then we can decide what we want to track. But I have, I don't know, about 4 things I assigned to Brandy, 1 I assigned to Derek, 1 to Rick, and a couple for myself. So we definitely want to talk about those.
Do you happen to know the bill number?
I want to say it had a 48 in it, Bob, but beyond that, I couldn't tell you. I'll send you the latest.
Why don't you send it to me? Let me see if I know the author.
Okay. I will do so. I'll find that. Send it to you.
All right.
All right, so to finish up performance reporting, looking at wastewater for June, we had 1.2 million gallons coming into the plant. Of that, 49% was I&I. That brings us to a year total of 33% I&I. And that still sounds high, but looking back at the past 4 years prior to this one, we were anywhere from 49% at the end of the year up to 65%. So we do think that this program of rehabbing our manholes, doing collection system repairs is making an impact, and we will be continuing working on that throughout the summer.
Great, thanks.
As well as the smoke testing, which will also be helping that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on that? There's also the aquifer levels. So the levels are creeping up, it seems like.
Yes, they have been lower than winter occupancy and being able to alternate the wells.
Yeah, good. Okay, any other questions or comments on the performance reporting, aquifer levels? If not, we'll move on to item J, General Manager Objectives.
So these are the objectives that have been reviewed by the various committees, and they each respectively recommend these to the board.
Okay, board members, any comments on any of the goals from any of the committees? I have several, but first ask if others have any.
On the planning side, I think the list is summarizing what the committee has put forward, one of them being the connection fee analysis that need to be looked at. So I'm comfortable with what we see here.
Okay. I just had one question for planning, and this is really for Eric. Eric, some months ago, there were some issues associated with will serve calculations. I know one had to do with the regulations associated with our wastewater treatment plant. And I know you were in the process of resolving those things. I just, is that something that still needs to be considered by planning and so on, or is that all resolved?
The will serve, we do maintain that spreadsheet. I think it was originally done by Matt Wheeler, I believe.
Yeah.
The only change to will serve capacity has to do with wastewater at this time. We are working on the report of waste discharge to submit that to the state. So hopefully that will resolve it. I could update the will serves, but I anticipate they'll be resolved through a new permit from the state.
Okay.
Such that we won't have to take them down. If it doesn't get approved or they approve a lesser amount, we will need to revisit wastewater at some point. But right now I'm just in a holding pattern.
Okay, so it's not something that has to be addressed right now in committee.
No, I don't believe
so. Okay. For finance, yeah, item number 6, if you could go to finance.
Oops.
I'm just wondering if item number 6 can be a little bit more aggressive than it is, because this just says apply for it, loans. But couldn't we have as a goal to successfully secure a commitment for low interest rate financing for the wastewater treatment plant improvements that are approved in the 5-year capital budget?
If I was a loan officer and could approve it and it was in my control, I would maybe concur with that.
I don't think his motivation is any different whether we write it that way or not.
Happy to change it though.
Standish, do you have any thought on that?
So instead of apply for, secure?
Yeah. Actually get the loan.
Yeah, secure.
I'm going
go
to
for that.
switch over to a different screen so I can update live.
I mean, I understand Eric's
Your point's a good
reluctance
one,
because he's not really in control whether or not we can secure it or not. But I don't know.
Is that
I'm
better?
comfortable either way, but I think your point is a good one.
Yeah, that would do it for me.
Okay.
I mean, and by the way, you know, we've never gone through a process of weighting the importance of goals, and I don't know whether the board wants to do that at any point. But, you know, to me, this is one of the most important things that can happen in order for the community to continue operating reliably.
Don't worry, Eric, with a K. If you don't achieve this, you've got 28 others that you can achieve.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, if at some point I think we should have a discussion whether or not to weight goals. But if we were to weight goals, I would put extra weight onto this one for sure. Applying, I wouldn't. Securing, I would.
Yeah.
In communications, is it just going to be a matter of course that there'll be communications about the RECs and offsets program and communications like as were amazing this year for the summer festival?
Yeah, I don't know that we want to put ministerial stuff that we just do by matter of course, but I'm happy again to add.
No, I don't want to add goals just to add them. I just wanted to mention those things.
There's a list of about a dozen things that happen every year on a schedule.
Okay, great. And then for operations number 2, this just addresses the distribution system, the I&I.
It's just the collection system, correct?
The collection system the collection, not distribution. Shouldn't we have something about implementing the wastewater treatment plant improvements as we've just approved in the 2021 5-year capital plan? So sort of a 2A and a 2B.
I have it in 3, which is the precursor to us getting the USDA funding. I can modify 3 to, develop the preliminary design report to implement the recommended rehabilitation by November 2020 and construct the associated improvements or something.
Well, yeah, it's I mean, we've got a capital plan now. We've said, we've been told that if we don't get this stuff done, we have real potential problems with keeping the community open.
Right.
And, so it seems to me like it's a really important thing to get at least the parts done that we've said that we're going to get done.
Does that look better, Eric, what I modified there?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, no problem.
That's it.
Can I delete this, Bob?
I agree.
Let's see.
I just like saying
go ahead.
It makes me happy. So.
Go ahead and try. Let's see what happens. Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Next time, may I?
Yes. I thought I was the word miser. You got me, Bob. You did get me.
Just
I do that to
trying
my
be
children all
helpful.
the time.
Okay.
Okay. So any other comments by board members or by the public on on the goals for this coming year, for this year? If not, then I'd like to entertain a motion to approve these objectives for 2021.
So moved.
Standish moves. Is there a second?
Bob seconds.
Bob seconds. All in favor? Roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Burrow,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, we got our work cut out for us. Okay, we'll move on to item 9, General Manager's report.
I will be covering Rick's report as well, as he is on a much needed and well-deserved vacation. We do have the contract with Stantec to develop the pre-design report for USDA to apply for the wastewater low interest loan. That was $30,000. I also have, as part of that contract, the first phase of the engineering as a phase 2 of the contract, which is the engineering for the associated improvements that we are targeting for this year, the exhaust fans, the rehabilitation of the lab area, the conditioned space, etc. So I have both those in the same contract. Total contract is $79,000, but that includes the engineering. So obviously that's contingent on us getting the money from USDA, and it would be obviously part of the loan that we get from USDA is to recompense the engineering, because that can be capitalized. As I mentioned earlier, and I think maybe I've already covered it, so blew it there, but I did attend quite a bit of CMUA and Aqua conferences, not conferences, that's not the right word, but webinars this last month, which included a lot of legislative updates that were of interest both for electric and water, some wastewater to a smaller extent. Took a lot of good takeaways from that, a lot of things I've shared with Brandy, a lot of things that are coming down the pike relative to anything from wildfire management plans. I was able to get an update if there were what we needed to do on the independent review. There is no update from the state, but I was able to get that information out of that, information about CEC, rec tier 3s, things like that, and water bills, as I said. So those are really very helpful right now, and I'm very thankful for Zoom, that everybody's unfortunately stuck in COVID, because I can attend these a lot easier from Kirkwood. So very much enjoy that. I do have a report from Rick on the summer festival. I don't know if we want to just do that under 12, I think. And same with playground. I have updates on both of those. So Eric, I can defer those to 12 or do them now. Your choice.
Why don't you go ahead and do them now?
Okay, so I'll give the summer festival update. So this is from Rick. The virtual summer festival is a tremendous success thanks to the support from the community. We're still finalizing the numbers, and we'll provide a full recap of the event in the August newsletter and at the August board meeting. But here are some key bullet points. So far, we received just over $59,000 in donations from the community and our vendors. So the original goal of $30,000 over the next 4 years to purchase the Type 6 Light Rescue Command Vehicle. The silent auction raised over $13,000, and we're awaiting the final numbers from Bidding for Good, which Ann and Cheryl recommended to us, and from what I heard from Jess, was the way to go from here on out. Just really easy to use. We even had someone bid or buy something from North Carolina, I believe. Cheryl, it was a book, and Cheryl sent that to them already. So we're also very grateful for the anonymous donor that offers the challenge grant donation of $60,000. With the generous offer, we met the challenge, and the check for $60,000 was written and sent to the district. So we'll be sending out our thank you letters next week. I do know that Rick has already tasked our mechanic with looking for the Type 6 Light Rescue Command Vehicle now that we have the money. So they're going quickly, so the community will see an immediate result from their generosity. So special thanks to all the committee members, Ann O'Grady, Cheryl Stern, Ann Oppenheimer, Beth McAllis, and Jess Gillies, with a lot of support from Bob, Corey, and Drew. Per the chief, the members of the volunteer fire department are very grateful and have already started shopping for the replacement vehicle. So big success, and couldn't have done it without that committee. They really worked very, very hard.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. I mean, the work of the committee and the generosity of the community is just amazing to me. This and the playground, just amazing.
Ann or Cheryl, anything you want to add to that? You don't have to.
In summary, 59,000 in cash donations, about a little over 14 in festival auction, and then of course the matching challenge donation. It's pretty remarkable. But I really give credit to the community for stepping up and really making that matching gift happen.
And I think that the hour-long festival was a fun thing to watch.
We do have some of the metrics on that. Drew looked that up. I think at one time we had 56 people on simultaneously, but over the whole hour period, I think the average view time was 12 minutes, and I think we had about 212 people view during the live time, let alone the later on. So
we have had about 245 total view time. I don't have the metrics for how much they watched, but we've got a bunch of donations that came in during that 48 minutes, thanks to On's great documentary and the great firefighters.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add, Eric, is that the invoice from Bidding for Good should be in Kelly's hands next Wednesday.
Okay.
But I've tied out all the numbers. Obviously, Kelly has the staff time as well as the stripe fees, but everything else looks good. So what a great team we had, and many, many thanks to the community.
And thank you, Cheryl, for stepping up again for this one. That was a very nice thing. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure, Eric.
The expenses for using Bidding for Good were relatively inexpensive, if you will. $500 to use it, credit card fees, and then they get a percentage of the whole thing.
Yeah. Hi, Chewy.
Sorry. Another dog. We'll go mute very soon.
No.
2 dogs going by. Anyway.
Okay. Does that end your operations report? And
I was going to update on playground where we are, if that's okay.
Sure, please.
So for those of you that are in the Valley or have been in the Valley the last couple of weeks, you've seen some changes out there. We have all of our stormwater best management practice implemented around the site to prevent any runoff. There was a visit by the state, and they actually complimented us on what a good job we did. So that was nice to hear. And we have found a lot of interesting things as they've been doing the demolition. We had a 14-foot by 4-foot by 3-foot concrete footing for the chin-up bars.
Wow.
Well, don't know why it was so large. My guess is they just wanted to get rid of the concrete. That delayed them about a day because they had to jackhammer through it because the backhoe could not pick it up. It was about 25,000 pounds by my calculation of that size. So they did get it out, and it's should have been hauled away yesterday. I don't know if ACES came or not, but that did get out of there. All the demolition, or 99% of the demolition, is done. We don't know what else we'll find, of course, but the rough grading for the lower site is complete. Where the old play structure was. So that is done and ready to start work on the footings for the retaining wall. The rough grading for the ADA compliant walkway is about 70% complete. We are on track to have that ready for our volunteers to come in and do the formwork and the rebar the last weekend of July, so the 25th, 26th. All contractors should have been contacted by this point and are aware of it. And so that's the date we're shooting for, and we'll have the materials on hand that Monday. But it's just, we've found a lot of things that have slowed us down through no fault of staff's. Dave's trying his darndest, but he just keeps finding a lot of problems. We also opted to remove The swing set foundations, they were in very poor condition. Since we're in there now, it's the time to replace them. We're gonna, there's an economy of scale that we'll never be able to achieve again. So we went ahead and removed any suspect footings as well. So that is going on. We do have our 4x8 playground under construction sign was completed Monday. My wife will be picking that up, and we'll be installing it on Tuesday, so everybody can see what we're working on for those that do have the questions or are unaware of not reading the newsletter or visitors. And the equipment has been delivered. It's being stored up near the powerhouse. And let's see, I think that's we were allocated by the state $178,000 if we could come up with a project to spend that money. So
for what purpose? I mean,
for playgrounds. It's a playground allocation.
Well, it's a grant.
There's a matching component through Prop 68. So I believe it's a 25% match. So that's what the allocation came out on our per capita. That basically, that's the lowest they can give, and it didn't matter on size below that. We just hit that 178. So we do have to come up with a viable project to apply for that, because there is an application process, but that is our allocation from the state. And if we have,
and it's specifically for playground or recreation or for what?
What about school?
It's not for school. Sorry for
what
trying.
What about a school playground that looks like a classroom?
Yeah, exactly.
We could try and finagle. Like I said, we just have to come up with a project and apply for the funds.
In what time frame?
Criteria. They just actually on Thursday they just released the application and the adopted criteria. So I need to go through that, and we'll be starting on that. So maybe we'll bring that to. I don't know if we want to.
Let me ask: is it specifically for recreation, for playground or recreation or something like that?
Yes.
So, for example, and I don't know what we want to do. I'm just saying, for example, to renovate the climbing wall.
That would be, yes, that would be a viable project, assuming we could take some ownership. Yes.
Or the zip line. I mean, I don't know if we want to take on liability and all that. So I'm wondering that kind of thing.
Yes, those yeah, it's recreation and parks. Yes.
Interesting. Oops. Okay. I just was curious if the playground committee members had anything to say regarding the playground. Anything further to say?
Sure. Am I on mute, Eric?
No, you're on. No, we can hear you.
Well, it's relatively new news, so there hasn't really been much discussion on it by the playground committee, or any discussion by the playground committee. We're meeting on Tuesday, so I think we'll discuss it there, Eric, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Tuesday, need a little bit more time.
Great.
But I would say, Eric, Rickert, that the last time I looked, we'd raised $117,000 of donations from 77 donors. So between that and the Kirkwood Summer Festival, well over $250,000. And I consider both those a spectacular success, especially in light of current conditions.
Well, I'll say spectacular is even an understatement. It's amazing.
And Eric Christensen, we traded emails on that state grant. I think you said that it can't be applied retroactively. Is that correct?
Correct.
Meaning, if we spend the money this summer and don't get the grant until later in the year, we can't use that grant for the summer's expenditures?
Correct.
It's kind of a bummer.
Yes. I mean, you'll recall I applied for this a year and a half ago, and we're just now hearing our allocation. So, yeah.
Actually, neither Ann or I recalled you applying for it, but we're glad you did.
It was before the playground committee existed. I think it was just an email you and I had.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we and the Vail, would love to get more summer things going. And if this can help with that, that would be great.
Yeah. I even think I read in one of their examples, they're we could potentially take on fish planting again under this grant if that was something we wanted to consider.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Hey,
I'm sure we'll figure out how to spend the money.
so towards that end, Eric Christensen, we have an economic development meeting next Friday at 1. Unfortunately, Matt Jones is not going to be there. I don't know. Do you want to attend that, or do you think
I'd be happy to attend it. I just need someone. I know that the subcommittees have been meeting, but this is the big meeting, or is it still one of the subcommittees?
It's the core committee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not on that, but I'm happy to attend if it would be helpful.
Where's Matt going to be?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a
Gerald,
Zoom,
Bruce, if that's okay.
yeah, it's a Zoom call, Eric. I'll have Bruce send you the link.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I'll definitely be able to attend.
And by the way, the concrete left yesterday.
Oh, it did. Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl. I was there early in the day, so yeah.
We were wondering if Aces would pick it up, but they did. It's gone.
Good. Yeah, we were worried that it was going to be a little heavy.
Okay. Thank you for those. That takes care of the temporary advisory committee reports. Let's move on to standing committee reports. Finance, Standish.
There's nothing we discussed earlier this week that we haven't covered in this meeting here today.
Okay. Planning, Bertrand.
Missing in action.
No, he's there.
He's just muted.
Okay. We did not have a planning committee this month, so there was no urgent matters to work on, and so we postponed for the next months.
Thank you. Operations, Peter.
I don't have anything to add.
Communications, Bob.
The only thing that we haven't covered, we obviously worked on the survey, is taking a look at the website, both in terms of fixing inaccuracies as well as ease of use. We're evaluating other sites' websites and then making a decision whether we want to do a major improvement or just some small incremental changes. So that'll be the next topic for the next meeting.
Great. Personnel, let's see, we did meet. Let me just open up that.
I think Aqua JPIA was the highlight, Eric.
Yeah, there was one other too. Where did I put it?
The 360 survey.
Yeah, sorry, just a second. I know it's here someplace. Oh, I know where it is. Sorry. It was okay. Yeah, the Aqua JPIA. I mean, we are in going through the process of becoming qualified. Is that right, Eric? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, they actually have approved our application to come into their pool. Their insurance.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's good. So we'll be talking about that, I think, in our next personnel committee on the 20th.
That's correct.
Of this month. Oh, I know what I wanted to mention is the update on hiring. So do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, yeah. We alluded to it earlier, but very pleased to announce we have filled our vacant electric propane operator 1 position. It's with Gregory Russ. He lives in Pioneer. So another person from my side of the hill. He actually lives just one street down from me. Go figure. But we're pleased to have him. He brings a cogen basically power experience from Georgia Pacific and UC Davis. So very pleased to have him on board. And then starting Monday, we will have Tommy Baggett starting. He is from Sutter Creek. His folks own 2 places up here in Kirkwood, so he's very familiar with Kirkwood and has a very good accounting and well-rounded background working for wineries and in the entertainment industry. So very pleased to have him starting. And I know Kelly's more than pleased because she has payroll on Monday. So it'll be good to get him right in and get him right in the fire. So I'm very pleased to have both of them starting. And I'm feeling we're right-sized on staffing, especially with COVID right now.
Thanks and congratulations on that. Nice job in that hiring. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was we did see a first draft of a survey to basically it's an employee survey to find out more about what they believe we could do, we and Eric can do to help them be successful, to feel challenged, appropriately challenged, growing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're going to see another draft of that on July 20th. And then we hope to have all that done by the end of this calendar year. So that's personnel. Anything else on that, Standish, that I missed that you'd like to mention?
But I think it would be great, Eric Christensen, if you could send around Tommy the resumes of the 2 recent hires, or at least Tommy Bennett, and include the finance committee on that one.
Sure, will do. I don't know that I can send it to board members. I don't know that I can send it to members of the public, though, for HR issues, but I will send that to the board.
Okay, so that's standing committee reports. We now go on to item 13, general discussion. Opportunity for questions, clarifications, et cetera, from board members. Anything? I have one thing. I'm very happy to say that Standish and I have recruited another finance committee member. This will come in August for formal nomination and so on, but his name is Frank Pedroncelli, actually. He and his sister, Tony Sirica, have owned a place in East Meadows for the last eight years, I think. Very familiar with Kirkwood. He has an MBA in engineering and sales background, now retired, lives in Sacramento. We've become acquainted with him through the East Meadows HOA. Very nice guy, and I think he will be a great addition, but we'll make that more formal in August. But what I would like Standish and Bob and Eric maybe let Just know is I think he should be invited to the next finance committee meeting just
Agreed.
as to observe and get to know what goes on. That would be great if you could do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, and let him know also that he'll be formally nominated probably via the consent calendar in August.
Sure, will do.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? If not, we'll retire to a closed session.
Hold on.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I was muted again. I wanted to add on the same register, especially since we are going to look at the website, KMPUD website. There is someone from KMA that was expressed interest in joining the communication committee, and I just think we should follow up on that, Bob.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. I totally forgot, and that's a good point. Okay.
Okay. In closed session, we have 2 items. We have closed session regarding general manager annual performance review, merit and bonus, and we have closed session regarding annual employee merit increases. So, as a reminder, board members, this is a different Zoom. I just want to be sure everybody has a Zoom link. Is that right? I mean, is there anybody that does not have the Zoom link?
I'm not sure.
Eric,
It was an email sent on July 3rd.
So I'm assuming we need to quit this one, correct?
So actually, I have a question for Bob on that because he's my Zoom guru. Yes, Bob, don't frown at that. You are my Zoom guru. So I was going to open that meeting and then leave it once Eric's in and set him as host, I think I did that with you and Standish before.
Yeah.
I think that'll work.
That works, yeah.
Can I leave this one open, or do I have, I don't know if I can have 2 Zoom meetings open at the same time. Do you know if that's, or should I just close?
I have never tried.
I'm 99% sure.
I'm going to go ahead and close this one.
Standish has a prediction.
99% sure you can't.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my guess. So for members of the public, I will close this meeting. Eric, do you want to set a time that I will reopen the public meeting so people?
I think, well, you can't reopen it until we're off the other one. So I'm going to guess at least 12:15.
Okay. So let's plan on reopening 12:15 or soon thereafter.
Soon thereafter as we can. And so anyone who, and we'll be reporting on any actions we've taken on 14A and B.
Correct.
Session.
Correct. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close this meeting for everyone. I will open the other meeting, and Eric, as soon as you're in, I'll pop out of it, and then you'll text me.
Before you close, I want to make sure that Peter has the link. Peter, can you tell us if you have the link, the Zoom link for the closed session?
So how do I check?
I have
to click off.
It's in your email.
Can you just bring up your email? You don't have to get out of Zoom to bring up your email, or
I can forward it to Peter's email right now.
I just did, Bob. I just sent it to him.
Okay. Right. So yeah. So after we get off, you can, and just be aware that there will be a password required, and that's included also in the email.
Yes.
So I check out and then look at my emails, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, bye, Peter.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, we'll be back. Well, it's we're back. So and it's 12:21. Well, we did have a closed session. We took action on 2 items. With regard to the general manager annual performance review, we concluded that Eric had achieved 82% of his goals. That resulted, along with his evaluation, in a 3% salary increase. So his new salary will be $166,577. And no, excuse me. I'm sorry. Let me tell you what his new salary increase will be. His new salary, rather. His new salary will be $166,634.76. That's a result of a 3% increase, and a bonus of $5,000 in accordance with his contract, satisfactorily achieving his goals. With regard to item B, closed session on employee merit increases, we have concurred with Eric's recommendation of an average merit increase of 3.2%, and this puts us at approximately our budgeted amount.
3.2 or 3.1?
3.1, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It changed to 3.2 when we changed that
1%.
CPI cap to 1.
Yeah.
It bumped it up to
the 3.2%. 3.2%. Okay, I think that's it then. Anything else, Eric, that I need to?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Have a nice weekend. It's going to be warm.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for a good set of meetings. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, this meeting is now adjourned to our next board meeting. Thank you.